I see some familiar names and faces. Okay, and I hope again, I hope the new year will be a good start for us in doing our this afternoon's no rationalization psychological assessment. So as you prepare for your board examination, both for psychometricians and for board exam for psychometrician psychologist. Welcome to everyone, and I hope this session will set up good setup for you in doing your review in a few months time. So first, no, I'd say yes, oo, Happy New Year si Susie nandito. Si Jesus. Hello, hello. Kamusta naman?
Ano, bata-bata ko ngayon. O, ba't bata ko?
Yan.
Oh, oh, ba't katakbuhin?
Okay naman po.
Yatal ng hi Susie. Hi, microphone. Okay. Check me. Like, great. So for the start of our session, I hope this will set the mood for everyone else. I know you've been starting off with your preparations for your board review, but I hope this somehow no allows you to stir up some more motivation para tayo ay mag-push further no in focusing in our review. There's no shortcut when we do preparations for board exam and kind of major exams, for licensure. So we really have to make sure we try to cover as much one of those subjects na may wide scope na would be psychological assessment. But before we proceed, no, before I go on with the details no, of the contents of the diagnostic test, no, that I was told na take nyo na raw, and pardon me, no, mamaya pa mag-ano ako, because I'm having cough for weeks already. So, mamaya, hingal ako. Dahil sa aking ubo. But, we'll try to pull this off because, no, I hope to help everyone, no, para tayo lahat ay mag-prepare na, move forward no, in doing your review. Before we go on dun sa details ng diagnostic test that you have taken, I just want to check on, maybe you can have it here sa chat box. Your concerns, possible concerns, area of concerns or topic that you wish to elaborate further, or some topics in assessment that you want to highlight as we move on with our discussions, so that we can put more time in those areas because from psychological assessment, of course it would cover basic knowledge, but as well as yung mga technical know-how and functions. So maybe I'll give you time to think about what areas of concern you have at the moment. I'm not sure as to where you are already with your readings or the materials, although I know you just have taken your diagnostic test, but I assume somehow you have gauge as to your review for psychological assessment. Like, ano yung mga areas or possible weak areas that you want to focus more because we want to aid more in those other discussions in other topics that that may add more to your knowledge. So especially this is a mixed class. Meron for meron for psychology. So when you chat, maybe you can identify what board exam you're taking, tapos ano yung area or topic of your interest or concern for assessment, no, or something you wish to elaborate or something you wish to expound more. So I'm doing no I'm already doing an initial assessment. No. I have to do that because no that's where I'm picking up no when I discuss. No, I have to first know no my listeners or students or the reviewees here. So you have to help me out so that I know where we stand at the moment. No, kung ano yung mga areas of concern. Maybe you can chat here or maybe you can raise your hand, turn on your microphone before I go directly to the rationalization and diagnostic. Okay. Jesus. To see where to use different story ha. Because na ako ako ay magsa-struggle dito. Okay, use the different statistical tools with interpretation. Okay, different psych testing tools and where appropriate appropriate use. Are you asking yung appropriate use ng psychological testing tool? No, but I think yun yan. No, I hope I got the question or I got the chat here correctly kung ano yung area of concern on statistics. No, that's always an area of discussion. So that's a good point. That's a good point to ask. No, because although references would discuss no as to what statistical tool to use no if no there would be certain types of data no that we have no yung mga nominal ordinal interval ratio what stat tools pag pumunta tayo dun sa discussion ng survey tools na using Likert. Is Likert an ordinal or an interval data had always been an area of discussion. And so what statistics are we using for these types of data we gathered from survey questionnaires, especially yung Likert? A good point to emphasize, as or mentioned by Susie. Susie kasi ang tawag ko sa kanya. She's my former student in MPC. Ayan, in-announce ko na. And my former research advisee. O, diba? Way back. And then, I believe she's reviewing now for boarding doctor psychology. So, ang aking age, nakakalata ang aking age. Reveal. Hindi pa siya, hindi pa siya undergraduate student pa siya. But now she is now reviewing for for board exam as psychologist. The stats and ethics. Yeah, always the stats. Okay, ethics is also a good area of emphasis in the discussion. Why? No, because for one, in terms of update, no, if you have attended the recent PAP convention, they are coming up with a revision on the ethics in the practice of psychometricians and psychologists, especially when pandemic came in. So I'm not sure if there is some sort of a syllabus that they may somehow um, include these but it's still ongoing naman yung response on the end. So not sure if it will be used but definitely may mga reference on the ethics. Kaya lang In terms of practice, no, we also have to be familiar with the ethical guides no, in a local practice. And that, again, no, it's a good area to look into no, because board exam, no, it may be situational, no, and it may raise different points of view on how you're going to apply the ethical guides given varying situations and facts. So this is J. J lang kasi yung nakalagay. So J, no, this is although it's a direct message, maybe you can have that set to everyone. Okay, may another chat here from Mr. Jesus. Types of date. Okay, personality tests and intelligence. Yes, we'll have a discussion on topic, no, on lecture on personality and intelligence tests. And essentially the development of these materials. Let me see. Meron pa ba ibang areas of concern other than those? I think everyone agrees with statistics, no, and ethics. Okay, but I wonder no, if you have concerns no with test development because again no, it also includes no application of statistics because no in test development that's one of the practical skills needed and you may be tested no sa area ng test development as part of no, when we look at the board exam diba, it's conceptual theoretical and then the practical and those skills that you need to demonstrate in the examination. So I believe we also have to emphasize that, including the one mentioned here, no, yung application of statistics in test development, no, item analysis, no, item analysis. I believe, no, it's also very important, no, to emphasize. And what else? On top of my head. Other message here from Mr. Arboleda, specific tests such as the revised form of MMPI, the projectives, the intelligence test administration, scoring and interpretation. For that part, no, maybe we can get an overview no, of the test materials, no, but the specific discussion, the administration and the scoring, no, might I would have to say out front might not be included our and would be coming from textbooking. No, I may also have a discussion no, on the we will not be able to cover no, the in-depth discussion, no, especially yung part na the scoring and interpretation. Essentially, the concepts nandun sa discussion natin, yung concepts on how these scores no are tallied, how it is interpreted. But the specifics we may not be able to cover. No, yung administration, same manner, we'll get into the general concepts on how the tests no are administered. No, but again, the specifics. No, if you are expecting something specific in terms of projectives, intelligence test, or in terms kasi may na-mention na MMPI, or you might be expecting no, that we will be covering, for example, no, the in-depth discussion of MMPI. No, I may cover no, the overview and the concepts behind, no, but specifically, I think those no are not for review classes. So baka hindi enough yung ating time to cover. Pag may time, no, maybe we can get into in-depth discussion. No, but overview, yes, no, we can have it because we also have topic discussing yan, yung na-mention na personality test, which includes psychometrics and projectives, MMPI and projective, and topic of discussion, but not the specific test. So in the discussion, such as some references, meron naman din included yan. Has no his knowledge and the use of these test material, use of the different projectives and what's this psychometric. And MMPI, is really one of the classic test used, especially for clinical setting. Any other areas that we can check on note? We'll have this all noted, so we can plan very well. And we can plan very well how we're going to tackle our discussion. So yung today, of course, we have to start with basics. Yung aking file dito is actually our the file copy of the diagnostic test provided to you. Say the diagnostic test. Ayan. So for psychologists, they want to focus more in depth na dun sa specifics. But this is a mix of psychometricians and psychologists, but mainly this is for rationalization naman. So maybe next time, we can have them. I would have to request we will have them in separate class, because we can see there may be different interests, and maybe be having different focus with regards to the topic. Yes, another reviewee for the board exam for psychologists, Chenzi Valentin. Ayan, thorough discussion ng test theory, yung item response theory, tsaka yung classical test theory, classic test. Saying that this is basic, this should be on top of your head, basic concepts of these two theories have to be emphasized. Ayan. Nandiyan din yan sa ating coverage. In the introduction part, especially dun sa coverage ng ating the diagnostic test, I think yung mga questions related to that. So, ano yan? Conceptual yan. That's a good point to emphasize also, because that would put you that would give you a good foundation kasi yan in assessment. So yung knowledge nyo of what these theories say about the test scores matter a lot, especially na ang mga scores obtained from the test are ought to be interpreted, used. So decisions are done based on assessment results, and that these theories are the foundation of how the test scores are interpreted. So let's look into that as well. Yes. To do that, kasi that's basic tier foundation. At talaga meron tayong a full discussion nito. But today, we'll have the overview of that one, so some of the items that we have here sa ating review. So there I'll check a few more messages hanggang 1:30, so we can afterwards move to our rationalization. Punta na tayo dun sa ating agenda for this afternoon. But thank you for those messages, talking about your areas of interest and concern that you want to focus and highlight, especially dun sa ating mga RPsy reviews. We will look into all these so that you can be guided when you do your review. Ano pa, how about for psychometricians? Parang mostly, mga RSI reviews yung nandito messages. How about for our reviewees from psychometricians? Tahimik ang ating mga reviewees, psychometricians. Wala pa ako nakita na messages. Meron na ba? Antayin natin. They're still out checking out what they want to. A message from Jacqueline has mentioned I should choose them. But is this for psychometrician or RSI also? For others yun, parang to refresh their minds dun sa basic. Okay yun. Talking about ethics, the ethical guides, the ethic codes, and for how from ano na lang, years na from the last discussion of the base. Yes, no, so that will actually start with the basics. Complex is on review. Thank you, Miss Jacqueline, for your message. For psychological, one more minute. Psychometric. One more minute. Any other, parang tahimik yung ibang sa psychometrician na baka ano na sila, no? Ready na sila for pre-boards. Ready na for pre-boards ang ating mga reviewees for psychometrician. It's psychometrician review. So, ang hope natin, we cover as much. We may be immersed with reading a lot, but that really is the basic or the standard when we review. We really spend time reading. Now when you allot time to read, of course you have to strategize as to how you're going to distribute the topics you are to read, and strategize on how you're going to pace yourself, para hindi very tiring. Importante rin kasi yun, that you are able to pace yourself. Another message for Sarah, discussion of tests example for managerial requiring critical, actually this two, I think the one as concerns si Sir Arboleda o specific discussion on MMPI. This is also for review for psychologists. This would be materials specific to, there are actually a lot of test materials. We may again going back look into some of these materials in terms of overview. I would know a few culture fair test materials. call that CPIT, and may mga varied types din. But I may look into discussing the overview for this for this kinds of discussion coverage. But um, again, na yung very detailed and in-depth discussion, I am not very sure if we will be able to look into the actual test material. So baka you might be expecting to have an access to the actual test material. Believe no, we can only look at yung overview test for this. But noted yan, Sarah. We'll look into this types, different tools. By this test. So that if given situations, if given questions not related to measuring a certain abilities not related to supervisory or managerial, we may have know-how of what test to use in a set of test methods. Okay, so um we can now move to our main agenda for this afternoon. I'm able to see your concerns. Thank you for all your messages for letting me know your letting me know your sorry, I'm looking at a message from Sir Sir Dom. No, if if um if I'm correct, no, our schedule is for this afternoon is 1 to 5. So essentially, no, I'm using this synchronous session to set the tone, no, on how we're going to our review, lecture hours. So um it's a board individual rationalization way to discuss yung content ng ating diagnostic test. But no, I again no, I want to use this as a way to know an area of content. So I'm happy that I have here your messages. I hope others or interest no or need no in terms of how they want no, the review no, to progress later on. So important yeah. So, but of course no we'll cover the most important parts yung pinakakailangan for our review for our board exam. Okay. So if ever you have other things in mind, no, maybe message disclose dito sa ating chat box. I welcome those messages. See, going back, no, importante that no, we know how we want to progress no, in our review, but still we may not we will by our on your on your end you have to also set your own plan for your reading material. So let's now I'll share screen yung aking this is a PDF file of the diagnostic test so that we can proceed with our agenda. If ever If ever you have concerns no, with my audio, see, had been encountering problems bago itong synchronous class na to. I've been na problematic. Please notify kung meron akong audio concern. Puntahan na natin yung ating file. I'll share screen ng ating this is a PDF file no, the diagnostic test. Okay. Psychological assessment. Okay, can you see now the PDF file? Kita ba siya? Or clear ba yung file here? Alam. Yung screen kasi. Anyway, sige, I just set up this possibly um we have subjects. And I hope this will do. Ayan, punta na tayo. So, ayan, no, okay. So, ano to, and Professor teach, I've been part-time professor there. Meron bang meron bang, so those are areas of interest now that I handle. And just just recently just recently, I'm able to finish or earn my Juris third degree with God's help. And I understand how it feels to do review. Kung tayo ay isang bagay na naiintindihan pagre-review at pagbabasa ng madaming materials because it wouldn't be a walk in the park when we're trying to consume materials. But again, we just have to pace ourselves. You learn to gather your materials and distribute topics. Kung meron kayong topic na concern, actually, yun, kaya natin yung in-emphasize dito. Those are areas that we want to start off in the discussion. But in this diagnostic rationalization and the diagnostic test, of course, we go back to mainly some of the basics. Okay, so start off yan. Ito yung mga few questions. Ito ay 21 page na file material, which actually includes the 150 multiple choice questions. Okay, so when you tackle MCQ questions, usually I'd say it's one of the challenging type ng question. So, bakit? Kasi hindi lang siya knowledge-based question. Multiple choice questions will always test your ability to analyze as well, apply, and evaluate. Kasi merong process when you answer MCQ. So with limited time in the board exam, what you want is to grasp immediately grasp yung question, ano yung pinaka main point of what's being asked in the question, so that you can choose appropriately the best answer among the choice. Okay, so ito yung dito sa simula, it could be a few basic knowledge or know-how in statistics. Hindi mawawala when we talk about psychological assessment, our ability to measure, quantify, come up with a psychological profile of our client or examiner. We cannot take away the fact that statistics will have a role here in this talk. Because statistics would be a tool that will allow us to organize our data, our assessment data. So sample question, let's start now. A distributed test scores is 75, 92, 96, 88, 75, 62, and 88. The distribution can be characterized as, so you can see from the choices, these would be measures of sexual tendency. Now, if you are talking about statistics on top of your head, you have to be familiar with. A while ago, we're talking about types of data. There's a message here. The types of data would include interval data or ratio or nominal or ordinal. Then for basic summary of these data, of course, lagi hindi natin kalimutan yung measures of central tendency, the mean, median, and mode. Okay, so mode here talks about, when we talk about mode, yung highest occurring frequency in a distribution. Okay, so when we look at unimodal, meron lang isang dominant na number with highest frequency. But looking at the distribution, it's actually 75 and 88. It's not only 75. Why? Because both would have frequency of 2 in the distribution. Okay, so ang ating correct answer, obviously, would have to be letter B. So wag kakalimutan for review, mode would be the highest occurring frequency. Why do we need to know this? Because when you interpret specific score, whether the score would be, for example, interpreted as an average score or a dominant score, or the one that's for example least occurring in the distribution. So when you interpret a specific test data, it would matter when we compare it with the other data from the distribution, from the other examinees who took na the same test. Okay, so remember that na yung statistics, yun yung role. And of course, I'm banking idea already of norm referencing. When we interpret a score will remain a number only unless we put a system on how we're going to interpret it. So ang isa sa mga manner on how we interpret it is we compare it with the other scores in the distribution. That's why measures of central tendency will always be relevant. Okay? Maaari mo sabihin, ano man yan, basic, it's very basic, that's elementary, that's correct, no, but that is a very good foundation on you and understanding further on how you're going to interpret test data. Okay? So, maraming interpretations na derive from the basic knowledge of comparing specific test score as to whether it's a dominant because it's frequently occurring as defined. Okay, so mode pa lang, meron ka na agad inference on a test score. Somebody who would for example an examination of which 1 to 100 yung exam, and then when we talk about number of examinees, for example, we have 10 examinees from 1 to 100. Ang mode would be, for example, 40 over 100. And given that mode siya in the frequency of those examinees who got a score of 40 over 100 would be 7. So among 10 examinees, there are 7 who got a score of 40. And this is, for example, a diagnostic test similar to this. So if you would be asked to going to the connection of identifying difficulty level of the test, you can already infer something about it. So, yung basic knowledge pa lang ng statistics, meron ka na agad kadugtong doon na understanding whether the test is difficult because the scores would be common. The common scores for the examinees would be at a certain number. That's very important. And that's something we want to emphasize. So that's something we need to have a deeper understanding. It's basic, and yet it will allow you to make inferences already. Or the difficulty of the test, in terms of other inferences we can make about the test score. Okay, this one, the next item. So let's run through some important details ng statistics later. We'll have that in our lecture discussion proper. Okay, so the lecture discussion, if meron tayong material, we will be discussing those topics. Okay, so this one, yung next dito na item, I'd assume is mainly about a simple definition. Okay, so in the language of assessment, blank refers to the collective influence of all of the factors on the test score or measurement beyond those specifically measured by the test or measurement. Okay, this one is an important concept as well because this connects to a topic mentioned here sa chat box when we talk about theories such as yung item Harrison theory or yung theory. Okay? And so why? Because also this has something to do with our interpretation of test data. So this is another concept that's very important. It's basic. So ang answer dito is error. So when you are faced with a definition question sa MCQ, the only thing that you'll be able to answer it correctly is that for you to be able to know and be familiar with all the choices in the MCQ. So dapat alam natin, again, yung ating basic knowledge, what are these terms in a test. So error refers to the collective influence of all factors, test score or measurement, because we say when we have an observed score, meron tayong true score, which is the characteristic of our exam, and meron din tayong possible factors that may influence that specific score. In item response theory states that the difficulty level of the item has an influence. Meron siyang factor on how tests are answered or how well one can answer tests that has right or wrong. Like specifically the maximal performance test. Maximal performance test tests your abilities, your knowledge, your aptitude. And so possibly kung difficult very difficult yung type, it could also lead to the fact that many score low in the exam. So error aside from the level of difficulty of the test in maximal performance. Error here, yung error mentioned here would be other variables that may have influenced the examiner. So there are different types ng error. Merong random, merong systematic. A part of that we'll also discuss some basic concepts in assessment. Okay, so when we talk about raw score, assume there already is. Now these are the numbers. So we get now as we count yung cumulative score, summation ng scores from the questionnaire. Yung effect size has something to do with interpretation, relationship. These has something to do as well with the strength of relationship among variables in a study. So it may have a significant relationship. If there would be a significant relationship among variables in your study, there would be a greater effect. In terms of the practicality on the application, the timing So part din yan ng process of test data in testing. Okay, because these variables are assumed to be correlated in relationships with other traits they measured in the procedure of assessment about our test. So pag nag-assessment mo tayo, we know basic to the procedure when is looking at the holistic view of our class. So at some point we may have to start correlating certain psychological traits. So it may apply well. Also a concept, a basic concept we need. So effect size is the correct answer here because this has something to do with the significance of relationship. And the outlier, the statistics, would be a significantly different data from the rest of the distribution. So may instances that in the distribution extremely high or extremely low score, very different from the other numbers, from the other test scores or test data from our exam. So yun, yung mga choices. Okay? Yung error here, the test score and the systematic score, no understanding natin, standard expenses. When tests are administered, we want it standardized so that we limit these factors. We limit the error or the effects of these factors in the test score. Why? Because it will affect the validity of the scores we have obtained. We want in assessment to measure what we intend to measure in a test. So the higher the error rates, possibly it will affect the validity of the scores we have obtained. So that's another area that we will be discussing. That's again, these are basic but very important topics connected to the other complex concepts we will discuss later in our review. So this one, for the third item, this would have to be a process of evaluation also, kasi it's presenting now again a distribution of scores, and you are now to assess and evaluate, which is true in the distribution of, no, basic naman siya, basic arithmetic again, no, it has something to do with measures of central tendency. Okay, so the distribution of 1, 2, 2, and 3, okay, is described as letter D. Now, the arithmetic mean is equal to the mode. Of course, when we talk about the mean, well, we talk about, the average score. So average of 1, 2, 2, 3 means you have to add all scores divided by 4, and that would mean 8. No, we have to divide it by 4. So the mean score is 2. Okay? And when we talk about the mode, the highest occurring frequency in the distribution would be 2. The value of 2 with 2 as the frequency. So the correct answer is D. And so same yung kanyang mean at saka yung kanyang mode. So again, no, you have to be familiar with the mean, median, and mode for this question. Standard deviation. Deviation is basic concept in statistics, but also very important topic to cover because again, no, this will give us inference, no, on how we're going to interpret test scores. So if the standard deviation is set, if the standard deviation of a set test scores equal to 25, the variance is equal to, so we know that square root of the variance is the standard deviation. So it means, no, kung 25 of standard deviation, you have to square it. Meaning you have to multiply, okay, the 25, no, by itself. So 25 multiplied to 25 is 625. So ano naman yun? Mga basic, again, a basic statistics. Itong mga questions na ito. Okay, number 5 question. If all scores in a set of test scores were the same, the variance now would be equal to 0. Okay. Variance, we talk about variance, diba? How scattered or dispersed the scores are. Gaano ka iba yung score from the scores of the others. So where we look at the mean score, the standard deviation would mean how far the scores are from the mean. Gaano kalayo yung mga scores from each other. But this question states na they were set of the same number. So since pare-parehas sila, they will not vary. The variance will be 0. So that's very important also to look into because it will give us inference on the homogeneity and the heterogeneity of our test data. Okay, pag ang ating standard deviation or ating variance, for example, no, would be high, so it would mean that our test scores no, are heterogeneous and dispersed. Well, it is heterogeneous and dispersed means pag nag-interpret tayo, ibig sabihin, hindi mo fully no ma-capture na yung conclusion no would be applicable to cross no the examining. So what we want no when we talk about test scores no when we talk about analysis no of our test scores, what we want is to keep our variance at a low level so that we know our data is homogeneous. Homogeneous means our data are not dispersed, or the numbers are close to each other so that when we make conclusions about our population and a given set of examination could be generalizable, could be applied for our respondent. So that's also important when we interpret test score. Next, for number 6, this is another statistic review of statistics. No? Users of psychological tests are frequently tempted to treat ordinal data as if it were interval data. Ito yung minention ko kanina a while ago. Talking about what statistical tool are we to use when we talk about survey questionnaires that are Likert in format. And that, ayan, Shopee ang aking audio. Sa a while, ha? My audio is Shopee daw. Sa a while. Hello? Mic check. How about this one? Is it better? Hello? Okay na daw. Okay. Ayan, okay na daw. Ano nyo lang ulit ha, i-mention nyo lang ulit pagka may problem ulit. No? So, ganun talaga ang ating scenario dito. I'm having concerns din sa connection ng aking laptop sa kanyang junction for the headset. Okay, so going back, no, ayan, better na daw. Better na. Please notify me right away ha pagka nagka-audio issue, no, so that actually mas importante na marinig mo clearly yung discussion kaysa makita niyo ako sa video. So if may connection issues din, I'll try to turn off siguro yung camera so that it would sound better. But since sabi niyo okay naman ang aking audio with the video on, no, I'll keep muna din setup. Tapos kung if ever ulit, magbago ulit na yung aking audio, you please notify. So going back, no, yung ating initial set of questions here, no, would have to be basic, no, discussion on statistics. No, because these basic discussion on statistics would give you better inputs, no, when you interpret test scores. So yung sinasabi ko kanina, when we talk about survey questionnaires, no, that are Likert in format, no, discussions in books, no, such as that of Kaplan in Cohen states, no, that Likert form, no, the Likert form of format, no, of answering a test item, no, in a personality test, for example, no, are ordinal in nature. No, ordinal siya talaga. And usually, no, in our treatment, no, pag tinreat natin yung data that we get, no, from a Likert questionnaire, it's actually treated as interval. So that's the nature of this question. No, na, we are tempted, no, to treat, no, these scores, no, from a Likert scale questionnaire, no, as if it were interval data. No, because, no, yun ngayon yung premise na bakit ganun yung tendency natin, no. And there had been, I tell you, I have I've I've seen various oral defense. It has always been a point of discussion as to ano nga bang statistical treatment, no, when we talk about survey questionnaire that's that Likert form yung I don't know if you have that experience, no, pero point of discussion among panel members, no? So ano nga bang statistics yung gagamitin, no? Kung ang iyong questionnaire, no, is Likert form. So usually, no, it has something to do with how we interpret, no, our test scores. No, the questionnaire may be Likert in form, no, but it could give us interval data. No, interval, especially when we get the total score, no, for each scale, no, in a questionnaire. No, and so they say, no, you're answering the item as an ordinal data when you rate yourself from Likert of 1 to 5. But when you have it tallied, pag tinotal mo na siya, it falls as an interval data. So, ordinal, of course, yun yung may ranking. So, pag interval, we were talking about the raw scores from a test. No? Most of the raw scores that we get from our test data are considered interval data. So here it states that it has added flexibility. If now we have interval level of data for statistical manipulation, it's easier to apply raw score in various statistical tools. In other words, so yung paggagamit ka ng SPSS or other forms of statistical package kung saan you have to summarize your data in a distribution, okay, such as mentioned a measure potential tendency, it's easier if it's in raw score format or as a form of an interval data, rather than placed as an ordinal data, which there will be ranks. So ano ba yung mga sample ng ordinal data? When we talk about assessment. So ito yung mga interpreted raw scores already, diba? So meron tayong raw score, and then from the raw score, diba, in interpreting the raw score, diba, we have to transmute it to some form of ordinal data. So we can transmute it as a standard score. Standard scores may fall likewise as a percentile, percentile ka-rank na ngayon yung ating scores. Once it's ranked, now it leads us to interpretation. Diba? We can now make inferences about our client dahil meron na tayong inference whether that specific score is falling within the average percentile or within the upper quartile range. So high scores yun. Pagka lower quartile range, low scores naman yun. So low scores would mean they do not possess the trait measured by the test. High scores means they possess the trait na measured by the test, and the mid-range ng quartile would be would mean this would be on a normal, the traits are on a normal level average. So dito, going back, yung knowledge natin of the different types of data matter. Why? Because it would lead us to understanding further how we're going to summarize this data, how we're going to treat it in statistics, and how we're going to interpret later on ours. So yun yung nature ng question yan. Bakit siya naka-post na question? Kasi nga, ang tendency natin, we would prefer in statistical treatment, we would prefer our data to be at an interval level. So that ito yung, again, these are the raw scores that we're talking about. Okay, so that's letter D for number 6. So further, pag-usapan pa natin yan in our lecture discussion. So it's just an overview of why is it necessary for us to be familiar with the different types of data. Bakit kailangan natin malaman na yung material or yung test data that we're handling is an interval data or an ordinal type. Because it would vary on how we're going to treat it and how we're going to interpret the scores. And once we are unable to hit the proper way to treat a specific data, would not be able to interpret it correctly also. So there is a domino effect. That's the difficult part in assessment. Now you have to be careful on every step of the process. Now one error would have a domino towards the end. And everything else will be invalid. Pagka namali ka ng understanding of what data you're dealing with, you may have some problems with what statistical tool to use. And lagi again, yun nga ang ating nagiging concern. Pagka nagkakaroon ng mga presentations or discussions, it's always a point of issue. So we'll have more clarity on that. Mga samples na we'll discuss more samples nitong mga types ng ordinal data. Basic naman. ordinal data are those transmitted data from interval. So we're able to obtain an ordinal data once now we're able to achieve some form of interval data or raw score. Kailangan may raw scores muna tayo. Hindi tayo come up right away with an ordinal data without our raw scores. Next, a simple again. This is your basic know-how of the definition of a simple frequency distribution. Okay, the simple frequency distribution is labeled as such to indicate that the data in it would be letter B have not been grouped. Why? Because when we talk about simple frequency distribution, it's just reflecting the data itself or the numbers or the scores and then the frequency. So hindi siya group kasi hindi pa clustered yung score. So yung group frequency distribution, yun yung part ng or type ng frequency distribution on which scores are clustered already. It's also important to know how scores are clustered and how we're going to have intervals, class intervals, because again, it's key not to interpretation of test scores. Okay, so again, this would be basic statistics, but this has a lot to do with what we will know later on about our inferences or interpretation of data. So another statistics basic information here. We talk about abscissa and ordinate. Okay, on a bar graph, comparing men to women with regards to test scores, one would expect to find the general variable listed on the abscissa, or when we talk about abscissa, x-axis. The ordinate actually is the y-axis wherein din natin nakikita yung scores, raw scores or numbers in a bar graph. Okay, so we're talking about a bar graph here. So usually you'll see a bar graph, the bars would be in vertical or in vertical position. Okay, further, so yun, again, that's just manner of presentation of data. Further, another question on measures of central tendency. Mode is to nominal statistics as median is to ordinate. Okay, so when we talk about the mode, again, we're talking about the highest occurring frequency. When we talk about nominal data, these are categories. Categorical yung pinipresent ng nominal data. So when we talk about highest occurring frequency, mainly these are highest occurring categories in a distribution. Kaya siya nominal. Yung pairing ng mode is paired with the nature of a nominal data or categorical representation. Whereas, when we talk about median, yung median, range natin yung score from highest to lowest so that we can see yung ating midpoint, yung score na nasa gitna, so that we can determine in a way that could be your cut score for the average. Okay, so when we talk about cut score for the average, that would mean we'll be able to identify higher than your median. Higher than your median will be high scores. Lower than your median would be low scores. And again, has something to do with aesthetic. So it's ordinary because you're trying to arrange the scores from highest to lowest. Okay, so hindi siya interval, hindi siya ratio. Interval, again, we're talking about the raw scores. Okay. Ratio, we're talking about frequency. Yung characteristic ng ratio that's not present in interval is that meron siyang absolute zero. Okay, absolute zero, maybe merong possibility that there's no frequency that's under a specific distribution, a specific score in a distribution. Okay, so we'll put more samples related to those when we get into our discussion. So this one is a longer type of MCQ question kung saan meron siyang situation. So in this scenario, no, sa mga instances of which you would be faced no, with a situational question, no, you have to dissect. No, of course, no, you have to train yourself, no, reading fast and being able to dissect parts no, of a situational question so that you can readily identify na yung issue, ano ba talaga yung kailangan natin na sagutin dun sa tanong. Kasi mas challenge ang application question because the questions that you need to answer are not explicit. Hindi mo yan kita agad. No, you have to go through navigating some parts of the sentence. And it may um, consume more time for the examiner. Kaya kailangan meron kayong training no, on reading. Aside from you reading no, yung mga textbooks no, for you to be familiar with the concepts, you have to be familiar as well with reading sample questions, no, such as these kinds of application questions. Okay, so that's another tip no, that you can help yourself out no, in preparing yourself for the board. No, pag mas familiar ka na on, aside from reading your textbook, textbook to be familiar with the concepts, no, and being able to apply these concepts later on, you have to be um aided also no, in reading questions or application questions such as this. Kailangan meron din kayo more orientation no, towards familiarity with this kind of question. Para pag nasa board exam, na mas ano na kayo, mas at ease na kayo na if you see lengthy questions such as this, yung hindi kayo ma-intimidate no, na parang mabibigla kayo na ba't ang haba, tapos malito ka na kung ano ba yung tinatanong. And it would eat up your time no, and everything else will be affected. Yung ibang items na alam mo, hindi mo na ngayon sagutan because you have consumed so much time no, in a specific item dahil nga very lengthy, hindi ka sanay dun sa pag-digest ng application question. So that you have to be acquainted and be familiar with. Importante din. Okay, so students receive a C score of 1 no, on a test of English as a second language. Okay, and the distribution of the test scores no, on that test was normal. So we're talking about normal distribution here. Okay, so the same student received a Z score of 1 on another test no, as English as second language. The distribution of test score on these tests was highly skewed. So highly skewed meaning merong tendency that the distribution is focused no, on a specific area. Pagka normal distribution, no, there is an equal distribution of scores on the left and right side of the graph. Now, if your distribution is skewed, could be that the scores no, are dominant on the left tail or the scores are dominant on the right tail. No, dominant on the right tail no, kung negatively skewed, dominant on the left tail kung positively skewed. So yun yung type ng skewness. No? But highly skewed, no, pag sinabing highly skewed means, yun nga, it's either nakafocus sa left side or the right side of the graph, meaning naka-clump yung score on a specific area. Okay, so ang question is, no, in all probability, you are now to infer or compare these two. No, if no, possibly you can have an inference towards these two. So considering no, that there are different distributions, no, even so the same ang C score nung examine, ng dalawang examine, nung student no, for two tests no, on English as second language. The distribution, meaning the norms of which the test is compared, no, are varied. Kasi yung distribution nila magkaiba. Isa normal, isa skewed. So, the correct answer for this one in terms of you making inference towards this distribution is the other test, meaning yung distribution of score is the same no, on the left and right side of the graph. Whereas for this one, there's different norms. No, mas focused siya on a specific area. So that letter D is the correct answer. So familiarity with concepts no, on this the shape normal distribution positive or negative ito yung score sa left ng graph. Left tail we know would mean there are low numbers. Pagka nag-graph tayo, no, yung higher numbers nasa right tail, yung lower numbers. So, positively skewed, no, if the scores are lumped on the left tail, meaning the scores or the distribution would be lumped on low data, low scores. So given that, no, there could be an assumption, no, that the test is letter B, difficult. Difficult kasi nga positively skewed means no, the scores no, are lumped on low scores. Okay, so we cannot infer that it's bias or cultural fair, no, because it has nothing to do with how the test is administered or how the test is interpreted. No? Ang sinasabi lang dito is yung distribution ng scores. No? Ay common score obtained by our examiner. So letter D, ating answer for that. Another item here in number 12. The distribution of scores no, from a citywide math test scores results no, in a mean of 70 and a standard deviation of 12. Okay, a score equal to 2 standard deviation above the mean is, it means no deviation to the mean score of 70. Above the means distribution going up the ating is 12. So that would be again basic math. The answer is 94. Okay. Also, now you have to to numbers such as that and deviation up in the distribution, or no, by subtracting 1, 2, 3 standard deviation below the mean scores in the distribution. Okay. Standard deviation ito yung one standard deviation up and below them. So this has something to do with memory work for those psychologists here. I assume you have been told that you have to memorize the areas no, in the normal distribution. Okay, so ganun din no, for our reviews no, or to remember. So one portion up no, the mean score no, is above the means 1 SD no, scores the high and lows. Okay, so another question here. Okay, talking about normal distribution of scores. If a particular measure yields that they are normally distributed, they may be characterized as desirable feature of that measure. Okay? Isa sa mga aim, especially for those test developing tests in test developing. One of the aim is for us to achieve a normal distribution curve from test data of our respondent. Why? No, because yun nga, meron siyang predetermined areas in the distribution. No? Standard siya. That's going back, it's something you have to memorize. So kaya siya desirable because yan, proposed estimated. Kasi yung distribution would not in terms of the areas being covered in the normal distribution. So we say one of the ways to achieve a normal distribution curve is that our respondents or our examinees would be randomly selected. One of the characteristics on trying to achieve a normal distribution curve, for example, in establishing get into discussions on test development para will be knowledgeable on how norms are established in the different tests that we use to assess our clientele or our exam. Okay, so that's normal distribution. So that's one characteristic that we say, if your scores are normally distributed, it's better than having the scores skewed. But in most instances, when we do our survey or our um, research survey, ang ating respondents are not ideally randomly selected. Minsan, or most of the time, there is purposive sampling. So yung purposive sampling has also an effect towards establishing a normal distribution of scores in a set of distribution from our examiners. So another item naman here in terms of correlation. Okay, so when we talk about since we're talking about test development, when we talk about item analysis, we cannot go away with the fact with understanding correlation. It's one of the tools na nagagamitin natin sa statistics. Yung pag-compute ng validity, reliability coefficient. No? Correlation formula will always be on top of the list. And many others. May iba pa that as mentioned, we will discuss in detail later, ano yung mga statistical tools that is aligned with this item analysis. Very important yun na alam nyo kung ang ating survey questionnaire would be dichotomous ang format. Dichotomous meaning ang choice niya is dalawa lang. So in an ABPI, for example, basic personality inventory, this is a parallel form or similar to what MMPI is trying to establish in measuring different psychopathologies. So, dichotomous siya kasi true or false siya. So, ano ba yung statistics best to use when we analyze items that are dichotomous in format? So, usually, in references, they would say it's point by zero. So, yung mga ganyang statistics will also be very relevant for you to be familiar with. Usually may table. So we'll get into that. May summary table as to what statistics to use. If this would be the kind of objective that we want to analyze scores on this to establish validity or reliability and all sorts. We have to understand saan natin gagamitin itong mga formulas na to sa statistics. And one of that is correlation. Okay? So when we talk about correlation coefficient, we're talking about relationships. Okay, relationships. How two variables are connected to each other. And that it could establish relationship between interval data if we are using Pearson R. Again, ito na yung usual point of discussion. It's Pearson R or Spearman rule. Pearson R is used to establish relationship or correlation between two sets of interval data, whereas it's Spearman rule or Spearman rank order correlation coefficient if it's ordinal data. The data is ranked. Okay, so here now the correlation coefficient is negative 0.98. Now, note na meron din tayong positive and negative correlation. Diba? So when we say positively correlated, no, the variables no would change no on same direction. Means one variable increase, the other variable will decrease. Pagka negative as shown here, no, inverse yung kanyang change no, data. So one variable will increase while the other variable will um, decrease. So inverse yung kanyang relationship between two variables. And then, the highest correlation coefficient that we can statistically achieve is 1.0. So the value here is 0.90. So always remember highest na value for correlation is 1.0. So near then, although there is a specific statistic to test the significance of R, in some statisticians, they would say once you have computed for your correlation coefficient, you also have to test your significance of R. Testing significance of R would require the use of t-test for another formula. So yung correlation coefficient sa subject mo pa for testing significance of R. Although by practicality or by concept, highest kasi is 1.0. So you can already assume that 0.98 is high or strong, establishing strong relationship between variables. So the answer here is letter C. There's a strong inverse relationship between the two variables. Okay? So kung wala yung negative dyan, hindi inverse yung kanyang relationship, it's direct. There's a direct relationship. Kung 0.98 yun ang palagay dyan, the answer there is letter D. There's a direct strong relationship between them. Okay, so I'm trying to as I discuss the items, I'm trying to give that foundation also the knowledge on what the terms are. Para we can already run quickly. Pag nasa statistics tayo, we can run through it quickly para we can focus more on the more technical, this more technical part of the discussion. Okay, so number 16, norm reference testing and assessment, both a method of evaluation and a way of deriving meaning from test scores. Okay, so meron tayo, di ba, na norm reference and criterion reference. When we have a table of norms, we know that this would be norm reference test. Why? Because scores, to say norm reference test would have to be compared to the scores of others who took the same test. So in establishing norms or table of norms, we have to have a set of numbers or a set of scores from our examinees. Now, from there, we get to compare whether one performed well or whether one would score high or low in the distribution if it's being compared with the others. So here now the question is sabi dito, individual test takers scores are evaluated against letter B scores of a comparison group of test takers. So meron tayong norm group. Yung norm group also is derived from the representative sample of a population whom the test is intended to be developed. And so again, this is a concept also related to test development and establishing norms for interpretation of the test scores. Okay, so when we talk about test development, we have a target set of respondents or examiners for whom the test is designed. So kung saan sila yung magiging representative group, which yung comparison group, which my scores would be interpreted in relation to the scores obtained by these set of examinees. Okay, so meron din yan tayong discussion as to um how no we're able to how we'll be able to set criteria for our comparison group for our development of nodes in test development. Okay, so further, ayan, meron item below talking about criteria na rin. So, madadaanan natin si criteria. Let's move further. Okay, number 17. Okay, this one is used to estimate or infer how far an observed score deviate from the true score. And is called, letter D, standard error of measurement. A while ago, we were talking about errors as factors that may affect scores obtained in a test. And when we compute, so statistically, meron tayo compute on how scores would vary from a specific set of distribution. So given that, meron tayong a way on how we're going to measure paano ba nag-vary yung scores in the distribution given that there are error rates. Okay, the error rates now will help us in determining standard error of measurement. Again, there is statistic or there is a tool on how we're going to measure it. But this one is conceptual in nature. Concept lang yung ano na rin. So, tinatanong. So, it's a basic definition, the standard error of measurement. So, hindi siya nalalayo dun sa definition ng standard deviation. When we talk about standard deviation, how far the scores are from the mean. Ito naman, how deviated a score is from, how deviated an observed score is from the true score. Okay, true score means, ito yung actual trait ng ating examine. And so, sinasabi natin, in any observed score, there is a part of which there would be error rates. Kasi nga, may mga ibang factors that may influence an examiner to answer an item correctly, or sa mga personality tests, there may be other factors that may influence them in answering an item favorably, or endorsing an item by answering yes to specific personality test question. Okay, so maaring they are answering it because they want, in some of the discussions we will cover impression management. Now, there would be tendencies in some of our examiners to create a favorable impression about it. So if there are items that would reflect some negative traits, they may tend not to vary their responses. So some of the tests would have some safeguards towards these kinds of errors, error rates natin. So ito, yung standard error of measurement, is the one that's measuring yung standard error rate. How far the true scores are, or the true traits are from the, how far the observed scores are from the true score, or the real characteristics of our exam. Going back, what we want is to keep our error or our variance or our deviation at a low level. Specifically, sa statistics, yun ang sinasabi, it's within alpha level 0.01 or 0.05. So we're saying that yung ating error, yung possibility that we are unable to measure what we want to measure is very minimal or negligible. So statistically negligible. So hindi tayo, none of us statistically can say we have assessed our client at a level of 100%. Okay. Hanggang 99% PR, kasi meron tayo alpha level 0.01. 95 to 99% would be the acceptable. But we cannot say that 100% we have assessed the client. But truthfully, that assessment will not vary when we observe our client. Hindi na yan magbabago. Kung ano yung test, kung ano yung na-assess mo, yan na yan 100%. We cannot say that. But we can say statistically that we are confident at 95 to 99% that our assessment will be acceptable about our client. And that's the importance of this standard error of measurement. We have to keep the standard error of measurement at a low rate, low level, because we don't want to have any shadow of doubt cloud our assessment with doubts, especially if this would mean some points of decision. So sa court minsan tinatanong yan. You would be presented in court as expert witness, you would be asked at times, how confident are you? Ganun. Prosecutor. How confident are you with your assessment that this will be true to your to the parties involved in that? And so we have to go back to the basics of statistics. So that you have to know. Okay? Again, basic yan, pero malayo yung nararating ng basic knowledge. So it would be too much not to answer if you will be asked with the prosecutors have been attending court hearings as expert witness for assessment of clients. So may instances na tinanong yan sa akin, and it would be too much for me to claim na pag tinanong ako na sinabi ko na 100% certain na I'm making up. I don't have basis for that. Definitely a no. So pwede sumagot na walang basis. So if you would be answering that question, you have to say that within 95 to 99% accurate. Statistically, that would be acceptable. That's very important. Again, basic to statistics. Ayan, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. When we talk about norm reference, meron din tayong criterion reference score. So, most ng mga board exams or criterion reference, although they may also vary later in terms of the criteria. So, criterion reference would mean there would be set of experts to determine what would be the set standard of score acceptable for the level of expertise needed for one to practice a profession. Kung sinabi board exam, usually criterion reference. Kasi meron kayong ini 75% passing rate for all board subjects. So you have 6 board subjects, yung items niyan, you have at least 75% correct answer for all subjects in your board exam as part of the criteria. Okay? So here, sinasabi, merong set na standard that one has to achieve. And that's why the answer here is that a criterion reference interpretation, unlike norm reference, is that it describes performance of the examiner in terms of predetermined standard. So yung going back example natin, yung examinees, yung mga board examinees on your end, pagka naka-achieve kayo ng certain percentage of correct answers. So if you are gauging your performance dun sa diagnostic test. Ang target natin towards 3 boards would have to be 75%. At least 75% and up na correct answers for 150 item MCQ questions for a psych assessment. So at least you'll be able to achieve that number of correct answers. So that's key to the criteria. Kasi yun yung sinaset. Minsan, ito yung sabi ko, minsan, they may vary. Minsan, it would also lead to some adjustments depending on circumstances. Okay, so for example, because of the pandemic, there had been a proposed change on the criterion set. Talking about the bar exam result, the last bar exam result for 2020. 2021. Okay, you can if you are no updated, or silang usually the bar exam will only have no a passing percentage no around 20-25% at most no, for the total number of examiners. Usually ganun yung range. The last batch, 80% above, I think 80+% yung pumas. Now, because no, somehow they have changed the criteria because of the consideration of the pandemic. Nagkaroon ng more leniency on how they're going to evaluate that. But definitely, no, meron yung predetermined standard. Yung predetermined standards usually is set no by experts. No? Experts are the board nakaupo sa ating sa PRC, ating mga board members. Okay, so kung kilala niyo sila or naging teaching sila, ay yung advantage no, on how you prep up for it. Part din yun ng somehow no, advantages no, of you having some network no, with examiner. So, minsan, no, part ng preparing for board also is knowing who are the board members no, and these board knowing that the kind of so style and approach that they have for questions so that we can prep and yun, ginagamit din siya strategy for preparation. But, nevertheless, no, standard naman yung contents ng inaaral. Standard, ibig sabihin, same naman yung topic to coverage ng meron naman yung syllabus to cover. Just that now it would have more if you're more familiar with your examiner. Going back, yun, sila yung nagsiset ng predetermined standard for criterion levels such as board exam. Now, most of these tests no are yung criterion reference most of it no are for typical performance, the kind of test of which you have to demonstrate some form of mastery. So not typical, sorry, maximal performance. Maximal performance means you're able to demonstrate some form of mastery over a specific topic or over a specific subject matter. So like yun, dito ngayon sa inyong board exam, of course, you have to have mastery no, on areas of, for example, from psychology or psychological assessment or social psychology or psychotherapy. Means, no, yung predetermined standard means you have to have substantial knowledge and demonstrate the substantial knowledge in the examination so that you're given license to practice because this will be key to your profession. So, yun yung reason why we have to predetermined standard for criteria level. So, ito, yung mention kanina, yung mga theories, yung 19 and 20, section 19 and 20, talking about theories in interpreting text or in assessment, we have to understand the scores we obtain in certain questionnaires would have to be interpreted in certain standards and in different concepts. Okay, so our concepts or assumptions. Okay, so in classical test theory, an observed score on an ability test is presumed to represent the test takers. Okay, letter D, okay, the true score and the error. So note, dun sa kaninang natin, mention natin, when we talk about an observed score, hindi lang yan yung when we say observed score, hindi lang yan yung actual trait ng ating exam. Always may possible factors that may influence the score obtained in the test. Although, sabi nga natin, we have to make sure that the test would be administered in a standardized manner, so that we can limit the errors. So, has to be more reflective of the true score. Okay? Although errors are there or factors influencing the true score, the observed score are there, but mostly the observed score would have to be more reflective of one's true score. Otherwise, yung inyong score would be invalidated. Means, hindi siya reflective of your exam. So, pag sinabi nating error, ito yung manner of which, we go outside, or like when we administer tests, we go outside the standardized procedure. So I'd usually mention this because the pandemic affected assessment procedures um, in terms of practice. Uh, Dahil ang assessment usually is done in face-to-face setup. The tendency is we may have now problems in doing it during pandemic, especially yung pandemic. Although ngayon kasi is post-pandemic na tayo, period. So we can now go back to the face-to-face setup. Pero prior to that, and I would assume if you are in further studies, you would be engaged in doing research. If you are in work na meron ding engagement in research, you have been familiar with distribution of tests or surveys through some form of online setup, such as the use of Google Forms. So given that yung Google Form, hindi na siya yung yung standard na procedure. So dun papasok yung tendency that there would be possible errors. Okay, so for those that pagka nagle-lecture ako, especially when we talk about standardization, I'd always say that technically, what we want is to keep our procedure intact when we administer score and interpret, because that would put us more confidence towards the idea that we have our true score more than the error in an observed score. So take note of that, yung sa classical test theory, hindi nawawala na merong error. But what we want is to put the error at the minimal level. And the only way to address that is to keep our procedures intact. Okay, but going back, familiar tayo sa mga online administration na ngayon ng test, such as Google Form. Now, if there would be instances that you really have to do that, and really restricted with the possibility of having a face-to-face administration of the test. You have to make sure that you still find a setup wherein you can have them observed, and you can have them closely monitored. Now, please avoid just sending links. No? Definitely, kung nag-send ka lang ng link ng isang form ng test, because that's now the convenient way to do it, that will now increase the probability that there would be more error in your score. So, mangyayari, it may put more doubt to the validity of the score, and we don't want that to happen. So, going back, your data, your data can be questioned if you divert or deviate from the standard manner of administration of these psychological tests. Okay, and that has an impact towards classical test theory. Kasi mas classical test theory, sinasabi, may mga external factors na so lalong maraming chance for other factors to affect our score kung link lang yung sinend na. Why? Because for one, our examiners are not in the same testing environment. Given the fact that they may take the test doing varying activities. Others may be traveling in answering your link. Others may be eating while answering your examination link. And any other thing we may do multitasking. Although also yung multitasking sa assessment, we don't adhere to that because of classical test theory. It increases error rates, possibility of deviating from the standard manner of administration of the test. Thus, it lessens our assumption that the observed score is more of a true score. So true score, yun yung characteristic talaga ng ating applicant than the error rates or the error. Right? So that's the basic premise no, of what a classical test theory is. Yan naman yung yan naman yung standard. So when we measure a test, so most of the time we really adhere to strict procedures. Okay? And that in my administration of tests, for example, in class, I usually have strict protocols. Minsan mahirap talaga kasi mahirap mag-adhere sa mga protocols, especially that we want to measure what we want to measure at mai-eliminate natin error rate. Like, for example, when you take the board exam, you would have to adhere to standards also on how these tests should be taken. So kung at a certain point, no, meron na silang computerized testing. So you would have to bring, for example, your laptop. In bringing your laptop, I would remember that there are some limits to accessories to bring. Hindi mo pwede dalhin lahat ng accessories na meron ka for your online exam, in a board exam or a board examination. They would have to refrain you from bringing some accessories na parang meron siyang USB type. So, pag magdadala ng laptop, no, kailangan plainly laptop and the charger. Kung meron ka mouse na dadalhin, hindi pwede yung parang USB connector. Because it may increase possibility, for example, kung USB yan na kung saan may memory, you may have access to some notes. So it may increase error. So they have to set certain standards. And so when you take a board exam, you have to adhere to standard procedure. And that's the idea of classical test theory. So pag inisip mo, bakit ang daming requirements na kailangan standard lang yung isusuot mo, merong specific color, kailangan kang mga materials na hindi mo pwedeng dalhin inside the testing area. Cellphones are not allowed. Strictly, iiwan ang cellphone. Hindi pwede magpasok ng cellphone sa testing area because those will be their safeguards to increase error. So ayaw natin na tayo ay take ng test that increases on the error rate. So same manner, item response theory is another theory. Okay. Item response theory, the latent trait theory, that's another term for item response theory. Latent trait theory. So this one is analogy type question. So in this analogy type question, we're trying to identify what's the same or similar term to observer reliability. Because item response theory, other term for that Latin trait theory. So in item response theory, ang ating concept naman is that the items, the difficulty level of the items will also have an impact or effect towards how examiners be able to perform in an examination. Si Sir Dom merong phone in message sa atin. Magbe-breakdown tayo. I'll siguro get into hanggang item 30 siguro. Then we can pause for a quick bladder break. Okay. Tapos kakanta si Susie habang tayo nagbe-break. Susie, yung iyong song number, you promise? Tama ba? Na ikaw may information. Pinasubo ko na dyan pa si Susie. Log out na dahil kakanta pala siya sa ating break. So, going back, tapusin lang natin. Ayan, nag-practice na pala siya. Okay, ready siya, ready siya. Ganyan talaga yan. Talagang very ready all that. I'll just finish hanggang 30. No? If ever we're not able to consume all the items, we'll find another session to consume yung ating yung ating yeah, I think our schedule is 1 to 5. Tama yun? Tama ba yun? I think naman, kung hindi natin yan consume lahat ng items, kasi 150 items yung nandito. Plus, meron pang song information number si Susie, mga abangan natin. We'll have another session so that we can finish yung mga items. Okay. Kasi more than the discussion, kasi part din naman I'm already discussing some of the concepts here. More than the discussion, very important, you would be able to practice test items. Okay? So another term going back for the item response theory when we talk about the difficulty of the items, it has something to do with and it would have an effect on the test score, so we talk about the difficulty level of it. Whereas another term for that is Latin trait. So observer reliability will also be termed as interscorer reliability. Okay, so in instances, diba, of which there would be several raters or scorers, especially if this is some form of a performance test. So traditionally, we know paper and test. But other than that, meron din performance tests. They include presentation of certain skills and may also be demonstrated in an interview question and answer format. So pwede siya panel interview. Sa panel interview, okay, we may have several rates. So identifying consistency of the scores of raters given certain rubrics would also be known as the interscorer reliability. And by statistics, meron din tool, meron din yung says a statistical tool used to compute for the interscorer reliability. So, usually, the kappa statistic. Okay, so yan, mga formulas yan, pero pag nandun na tayo sa item analysis discussion, dyan yung mga different tests na ginagamit. Different statistical tools to compute for the different coefficients. Part of that, interscorer reliability. So, kino-compare yung mga scores ng mga different raters based on a specific rubric, and that it's computed through kappa statistics based on some references. Based on some references, they call it Cohen, kappa. That depende dun sa author. Cohen kasi is one most commonly used material textbook for psychological assessment. So if you are to choose references, Cohen should be one of those references, aside from, of course, Kaplan and Anastasia, yung mga classic na mga authors na. So interscorer reliability is another term for observer reliability, which there are different raters and that it's computed to identify consistency ng scores ng rates. Okay, so for number 21, which of the following is true of systematic error? Okay, a while ago, we've already been covering yung error. So, sabi natin merong random error. Random error is an error that can only lie, for example, in one of the examinees. Random kasi, for example, a factor that may affect the score of the examinee during the test was administered was the physical condition of the examinee. Okay, so If the examinee is not in a tip-top shape while the test is being administered, for example, the examinee is sick at the time, that could be random because that's not applicable to all the examinees who took the test. Whereas yung systematic errors, yung systematic siya, consistent siya across time of administration of test to all examinees. For example, sa scoring procedure, minsan possibly may systematic error. Going to your basic experience, for example, taking tests taking tests in your classes, in your subject. So kung ikaw kapag take ka for example ng isang major exam, final examination, and then one systematic error was dun sa questionnaire ni teacher, meron siyang isang tanong doon. MCQ yung multiple choice questions yung questions. Pero meron siyang isang tanong doon na wala yung tamang sagot. So meron siyang question, A, B, C, D, but among the choices, there's no correct answer. So it would be systematic, because that kind of error, would be error from the questionnaire, the test question, how it was presented. So it is consistent in among all examinees kasi ni-reproduce yung questionnaire. Pagka-develop, am I still doing okay sa aking audio? Okay pa naman, parang akala ko nagbabagal yung aking connection. Going back, ni-reproduce yung questionnaire na yun, merong isang item doon si teacher, walang tamang sagot. So that now has an effect on the score. For example, that's a 50 item test. Okay, yung number 20, walang tamang sagot. And so, automatically, -1 na agad sa score ng lahat. And nobody noticed. And so, for example, in a 50 item test, the passing is 25. Somebody got a score of 24. Somebody got a score of 24. And that score will be interpreted as a failed mark. So lahat na makakakuha ng 24 failed. But that is systematic error. Why? Because merong isang item that has to be invalidated. So kung invalid yan, yung borderline of passing for those who got 24 would have to be adjusted. So consistent yan kasi lahat na mag-take ngayon, mamamali doon sa item 20 kasi wala nga tamang sagot. Okay, so regardless, administer yung test sa umaga na batch, may afternoon na batch, the same questionnaire was distributed, that number 20 to be invalidated because there's no correct answer for it. So that would now fall as a systematic error. So ano ngayon yung hindi correct? Yung consistency ng scores. All scores would be consistent across administration of time and batches kasi lahat mamamali doon sa item 20 kasi everyone would have incorrect answers for number 20 kung walang nag-contest item na yan. If nobody noticed that there's no correct answer for the item. So the answer for that, number 20, it has no effect on reliability measure because the systematic error, regardless of the time, would have to be consistent. Consistent yung effect to batches, to different administration of time of the test. And so, dito na tayo sa mga psychometric properties. Now, when we're talking about reliability and validity, I assume you are familiar that these are the key validity and reliability are the key psychometric properties of the text. Because going back, when we administer tests, we want it to be valid and reliable so that we know we're able to measure what we intend to measure consistently and that it reflects more of our client's true characteristics. more than the error. So number 22, as the degree of reliability increases, the proportion of the total variance attributed to true variance increases as well. Okay, so when we talk about reliability, uh, we're talking about consistency of scores. So consistency of scores means that scores would be the same across administration periods, test, pretest reliability, or administration of varying forms of tests, such as parallel form. So its proportion to total variance attributed to the true score. Why? No, kasi going back, diba, meron tayong true score, meron tayong error. So yung true score, yun yung characteristic, no, true characteristic of our examiners. So if reliability increases, meaning consistent yung finding, it's consistently reflected the true traits of our examiners. So that's the idea, no, the true variance increasing is reliability increases also. We'll discuss more of that when we are specific discussion of psychometric properties. Also, that's basic to what we want not to understand when we talk about validity and reliability. So itong mga parts na to ay ito sa psychometric properties topics. So this would be another question on the type of reliability, which type of reliability is obtained by correlating pairs of scores. Again, as mentioned, pagka tayo ay nasa psychometric properties, we cannot go away with remembering correlation. We correlate pairs of scores in our item analysis procedure. The same person, two different administration of the test. Let's test retest estimate. Okay, so we have a score obtained from our examiner, for example, today, and then we correlate that a future score by the same examiner in the same test. So that's test rate. So basic naman yung ano na yun, understanding or knowledge. No? So dapat ito, review, basic review ng ating understanding of validity and reliability. Yung mga procedures kung paano natin establish yung reliability. So kanina may sinasabi tayo, parallel form in a classroom setup. Teachers may develop different sets of tests. The sets of tests would have to achieve its characteristic of being parallel. Parallel meaning yung level of difficulty of one test would have to be the same on the other test if it measures knowledge. Otherwise, item response theory would be applied. Mas mahirap kasi yung isang test, that's why they perform four in that kind of that form of test. So, para ma-establish natin na same yung difficulty level, have to establish parallel form estimates. Correlate mo naman na yung score ng form of test to another. Whereas split half is the most convenient one to use. Convenient kasi na sinasabi yung test is just the answers in the test would just be divided into two sets. Usually it's divided randomly, such as in add even form. So the add scores in the add item so to be correlated to the scores in another ng even item correlation ng two sets ng scores in a test. But since split half estimate says, pag ginawa mo yun, you're only computing for half of the estimates, the reliability estimates of the test. So meron pa siyang correction formula. Again, that's statistic. So meron siyang applied na correction formula to compute further the split half reliability estimates. So we'll know more of those statistics later on. Further, number 24, which is the following is true for parallel forms of this. So yan, yung sinasabi natin, no? It could be parallel form, it would have essentially, no, if it's measuring, no, measuring the same set of knowledge, no, the same set of questions, only that no, it's framed differently. So, but the level of difficulty no, and the coverage no, would have to be same as well. So here, no, for parallel forms of a test, no, letter C, right? The answer here is the means and variances of the observed score no, are equal for each form of the test. Why? Kasi nga, sabi natin, when we talk about parallel form, for us to establish no, yung parallel form reliability estimates, no, we have to make sure that these two tests, no, although okay, in terms of framing the questions, they are framed differently, but the level of difficulty, the contents now will have to be the same. Thus, essentially, para consistent yung findings, dapat the means na the variance system, the observed score would be the same no, or equal no, for each form. So may form A, may form B. Sabihin, the same level of difficulty, the same content on what it's measuring. So when you administer it to a set of respondents, no, they may relatively perform the same. Kaya siya parallel. Okay? Which source of error? Again, another question on reliability. Which source of error variance affects parallel or alternate? Sorry, is there a question? And ba? Wala na. Anyway, okay, so affects parallel, alternate form reliability, but does not affect test retest estimates. Okay, so going back, no, ang aim ng parallel form, di ba? Same yung ano niya, same yung level ng difficulty questions. Yung coverage ng topics would also be this. Okay, yung test retest, no, it's a procedure of which you have to administer the test no, on a different two different periods of time. Okay, so it may be affected now pag sinabi natin alternate or parallel form, it may be affected by item sampling. Okay? Item sampling kasi it has something to do with the contents no, of the test. Okay natin, no, hindi magiging reliable no, or consistent no, in parallel form if no, one set of questionnaire would be difficult no, compared to the other set of questions. So kung merong sets ng test no, design in a classroom, hindi po madali na mag-develop parallel or alternate form. Kasi usually, no, ito ang ano ang approach, di ba? So as to limit naman yung rates, error rate, for example, cheating. Diba? Para hindi kayo taan your questionnaire would vary from one examiner to you. So, nangyayari no, dun sa mga computerized, yung mga computerized generated, they may have some test bank. Dun sa test bank na yun, so, for example, merong 500 MCQ questions, for example, sa test banks. And then, among those 500 items, no, ang kukunin randomly, ang kukunin is 150 items lang. So it cannot be no, na dun sa 500 questions, yung ibang items doon relatively so item difficulty matters no, dun sa item sampling ng parallel. So item difficulty, di ba, is defined as the number of examiners who are able to answer an item correctly. Ilan yung nakatama doon sa item. So, it matters na dapat same yung item that per item. Okay. Pag parallel. Kasi, hindi pwede na. Dun sa 500 items na i-generate na test bank, i-generate, ipili randomly ng 150 items. Some items will be easy, some will be difficult. So, pag sinagutan nung examiner, so, there would be a better chance for those kapag yung kanilang items na na-generate relatively or easy. There would be a lower chance na to pass to those examiners who took a test no, kung saan na-generate yung question for dito. So, hindi siya parallel. Hindi yan parallel. So, that's important to understand. The difficulty level should be the same level. So, pwede, no, that in the online examination, no, the items na randomly selected. So, hindi mo alam kung ano yung lalabas na number one question okay, for you because it could vary also from the other, but relatively the questions will be the same. So, when you are sitting next to each other, okay, yung question number one is different seatmates, iba yung question number one. So, randomly presented. But essentially, the content could alternate parallel in a computerized testing. Okay, so I'm mentioning that kasi yan yung ano natin. Yan na yung ating trend. No, yung trend natin. Right, utilizes this online examination application or plan. Right, 5 more items. Okay, get okay. This one, number 26, which terms refers to the degree of correlation in all items on a scale. Okay, so this is internal consistency or reliability. So kaya another term for that is the inter-item consistency. So this is another correlation of coefficient that we establish in developing the psychometric properties of the different standards, the different standards. And so we'll know more of that or in the statistics behind that eventually. Okay, further, number 27, which of the following usually minimized when using split half estimates of reliability. So split half estimates, this is the manner in which you administer the test once, again, and correlate the scores to items in the test, usually odd. So here, so it's minimizing no, ating resources. Kaya nga sabi nila, easiest no, to establish no, because you don't need to administer the test twice. Hindi katulad ng alternative test dito. So it minimizes or expenses our time. Kasi save natin yung kailangan mo wait na another period not for the test. To use different forms of tests. More expensive to establish reliability. So usually easy to establish that it saves time. Okay, internal consistency estimate of reliability are inappropriate for, okay, the answer here is word processing tests based on speed. Okay, yung reading achievement tests notice no yung scholastic aptitude or intelligence. Uh, Tests purporting to measure single personality trait can utilize no, internal consistency, but no, not for speed test. The, the, the speed test, relatively, hindi nagbo-vary yun. Ang tinitest dito is how fast you can work with a substantial number of items. So meron talagang large number of items that you have to work on. For example, okay, you have to find which is may mga several usually sa mga clerical uh, tests that measures clerical ability. No, may mga tests na being administered kung saan you have to identify which is, for example, which does not belong, which is erroneous or in a set of, um, of items. So you are to compare. So dito, yung mini-measure mo is how fast you can work. Kung masyadong madami yung item, for example, 500 items, but you have to work really fast. Unlike no, dun sa reading aptitude, no, personality test. No, here, no, varied yung mga questions. So since varied siya, we are looking at whether this item no, will be answered similarly if framed no, in a different context, not in another inside it. So, meaning, no, tinitingnan talaga yung internal consistency dahil kino-compare yung items to each other. You answer it inside it. Unlike speed test. So, what is being measured is how fast so you can in given a specific time. So it's not internal consistency, reliability. It's not applied these kinds of tests of speed. No, because unlike the three, no, it doesn't measure consistency of others across time. But how much you can consume in the test. Ibig sabihin, yung sa speed test, no, relatively yung given time, hindi talaga for you to finish everything. So what they will look, how much you can work on given, for example, 15 minutes. So, then sa mga clerical position, they will have so that they can see how fast you can work given substantial amount of time in a limit. And last, before we go on the review, no, typically adding items will have what effect to test reliability. Okay, so alam naman natin, basic knowledge so that the more the items that so the more that you increase its reliability. Kaya most no personality tests would have some lengthy items. The factor in a scale, for example, may have some 9 items or 10 items. So because we're looking at consistency of reliability, the answers so the so if you increase the number of it will have increase of its reliability. So that's the premise as to how reliability or consistency of kung mas maraming items per scale, the more you can compute mo for reliability. If the chances to look at its consistency across items is that. So in a test, for example, may mga scales, diba? Each scale meron siyang designated. The more the scales, the more and standard to test development, meron din siyang suggested number. So, we allot for item pooling so that we can establish a selection of items in every chance. Do item analysis. So, coherent also with make focus on what's standard. um, right? So we'll pause now for 10 minutes. Can pause for 10 minutes and then we'll continue um, the show again with record 1 hour bladder. Okay? So far, how are you? How are you doing? How are you doing? Kamusta? I hope I hope you're able to follow our discussion. Kung may mga concerns, please notify me, no, or give me feedback. Ilagay. Yung bladder break. Akin kasi is 3:33. So, back 3:30. Thank you. Hello. Let's resume. May I see if you are able to take a quick break already for a while now. Okay, so Tina, how are you doing? Sana kayo ay I hope you're not feeling overwhelmed, okay, and that we're able to again, no, sabi ko nga this is this session I hope no will set the tone on how we go about our review. So hopefully okay naman ang lahat. No? Thank you for the react so that I can see no na kayo doing well, still doing well. So let's continue. Let's proceed with more items we are discussing. Okay, so number we're now here no on error variance no for measures of inter-item consistency. So in identifying consistency of answers na across items in a test as a psychometric property, of course, meron siya possible error rates. Now, the error rates na are coming from, as mentioned here, heterogeneity no, of test items. No? So when we say heterogeneous, okay, yung ating test items are items no, are extremely, extremely varied. Okay, for example, it's level of difficulty for one. We mentioned a while ago that what we want no, in for example, in a parallel form or an alternate form, okay, that yung mga items no, would have a similar level of difficulty so that it's parallel. So ganun din no, with inter-items, since we are trying to look at consistency of answers across items in the text. We don't want the text items not to be heterogeneous or varied. Varied meaning they have this different level of difficulty, and some of the items will be extremely difficult, others will be extremely easy. So here, we want the items to be fairly the same so that we can establish inter-item consistency. The same in terms of difficulty or in terms of how items are framed or how items item formats are developed, something like test developed. Okay, so key in understanding these psychometric properties is understanding of developing behavior also. So we have to get into those as we move to these technical parts. This is the highlight technical. Kasi part nito, aside from the concept, we have to learn to understand how it's being established, paano siya develop in development statistics are applied in this procedures, in this psychometric property. Okay, so number 31, which of the following is not an acceptable way to divide a test when using split half reliability? Note that when you are establishing split half reliability, kernel consistency items also, you have to do it in a random manner. Random, hindi, hindi, ano, um, hindi siya pwede may preference. No? Hindi pwedeng may preference on how you're setting or distributing or dividing inside of it. Okay? So, answer dyan na hindi acceptable na manner letter C. For one, to message, baka merong mga concerns na with my audio. Again, okay. Press me to notify this thing. Okay, so going back, if it's not acceptable, letter C, assign the first half of the items to one half of the text, and the second half of the item. So, why is that? No, kasi dun sa distribution, we want to when we compare the answers inside the item, we want evenly distributed yung mga items. Evenly, okay, all items would have representation in the two sets na kino-compare natin for even yung items in terms of contents. So merong, for example, chapter 1 coverage for set A na items and chapter 1 na contents na questions also for set B. So hindi applicable or acceptable yung letter C kasi possibly could be possible that it will not be evenly the items in terms of contents and level of difficulty will not be evenly distributed. Okay, maaari yung most of the later chapters, for example, ay nandun sa second half of the test. So pagka kinompare mo, so yung distribution ng items hindi siya even because of the two sets of items that you're trying to compare the score. So that hindi acceptable yung kunin mo muna yung scores for the first half and then the scores for because there is a greater possibility that items are not evenly distributed in it. That's not the proper manner of establishing split half reliability. For split half, dapat even yung distribution, yung item sampling for the distribution or the computation, the internal consistency. So, computing for internal consistency, meron dito statistics question. Okay, so sinasabi dito that what is or which of the following preferred statistics for obtaining a measure of internal consistency, though this may most likely refer to a specific discussion in the book kung bakit yan yung preferred statistics. Yung Cronbach coefficient alpha, the most common tool being used for establishing internal consistency or reliability. For Kendall, yung Kendall na formula, ginagamit kasi yan for non-parametric data. Okay, so non-parametric yan yung ordinal no, ordinal data. So if you want to establish correlation between sets no, of rank no, or ordinal data, candles down. Okay, now yung KR20 and KR21, Kohler-Richardson, usually, no, it's used also for internal consistency, but most of the applications for the KR20 would be for those questionnaires with dichotomous or binary choices kung saan there would be right answer. And for Kunder Richardson 21, it's mainly for those assumption, no, yung assumption is the same yung difficulty level ng items ng. Okay, so that's the application of those formula presented. So for 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 your sake, no, para pag may mga ganitong question, especially kung ang mga itatanong, ano yung mga applicable na statistics. No, we have to have a matrix. No, kailangan meron tayong matrix. Meron tayong summary table. Okay, yung mga different formula statistics, anong mga validity reliability measures sila applied. We'll have that in our I'll present a material to split half, to test retest, no, applied yung mga for what type of data, parametric or non-parametric. Parametric would be for interval data, yung error scores, ordinal, no, or not for other statistics. So yun yung very important na kailangan nyo matandaan. So this has something to do with memory work. Memory work, so para mas madali na matandaan, we have a matrix na presenting this formula, no, and then for what specific psychometric property and for what type of data line. So, the best way para meron kayo on top of your head na this information would be available. Okay, so number 33, another question related on application of statistics. Coefficient alpha is appropriate to use with all of the following test formats except. So we know that this is computing for another psychometric property. So mostly for those items with choices, multiple choice, true or false, or those with partial credits. Partial credits means may points awarded for short answers. Pwede 2 point or 1 point. So or 0. Totally it's not acceptable answer. So that's answers of which coefficient alpha can be applied in the psychometric property can be stacked by computing coefficient alpha through these kinds of tests, but not for essay na no partial credit awarded. Kasi no partial credit, ibig sabihin, it's just all or nothing. Kung tama yung sagot mo, you earn the full point. Kung hindi tama yung sagot mo, you get 0. Okay, so that's not applied in coefficient alpha. Especially, that here, dun sa essay exam, it would require a more precise rubric to break down the partial and no partial credit. We will have that discussed in an example pag nandun tayo sa discussion of psychometric property. Okay, so but that one you have to remember na yung mga essay sa no partial credit or all or nothing yung scoring would have inapplicable yung coefficient alpha. This one I mentioned a while ago. I mentioned dahil meron na tayo discussion na mention kanina sa observer's reliability or interscorer reliability. But statistics, the kappa statistic is applied. So in some references, no, tinatawag siyang place kappa. In some references, tinatawag siyang cohens kappa. Kung baka malito kayo, ano yan? Ano yung nila, yung difference, no? It's just a manner of how, no, it's being presented. No? But both of which, no, kappa statistic, no, is for interscorer, no, interscorer reliability. Pag may several raters, pag merong iba-ibang judges, kappa statistic is applied. Do not be confused. Baka we are wondering yung mga names kasi, no, they may just vary in terms of the names of the authors, no, may just vary in terms of how the formula is presented. Same thing yung gamit niya. It's for interscore reliability. Okay, number 35, no, if a time limit is long enough to allow test takers to attempt all items. Ayan. Okay. Note kanina sabi ko yung speed, no, the number of items is enormous enough na hindi mo siya matatapos given the time. So, hindi enough yung ibibigay sa inyo. No? Pansinin nyo, in some aptitude tests, no, or some, yan kanina na message, mga clerical ability tests. No? There are some tests, specifically mga culture fair tests, wherein, no, you are given a limited time to finish everything. So, hindi mo talaga matatapos. Technically, there's no way for you to finish. What's being tested, is your maximum ability, yung upper limit ng ability mo, how fast you can work, that's speed. So, dito, no, you're given enough time to attempt. No, and if some items are so difficult in a perfect score, sabihin increasing yung level ng difficulty. As you progress in the test, sobrang hirap ng ibang mga items in a manner of which technically, yung sabi nga, nobody can obtain perfect, that's a power. Okay, so note the difference of the two. So these are different types of tests. So different types of tests may give you inferences as to what different um procedures, statistical procedures are to apply when we establish their psychometric property. Okay, so kanina, no, yung sabi, merong sample din question kanina about speed test. No? And so here, another item on speed test, typically, speed test contains items of a uniform difficulty level. So yung internal consistency, di ba, kanina dun sa isang item discussed, it's not applied in speed test, no, of which, no, the difficulty level would be uniform. Kasi nga, no, ang essence noon, ang mini-measure nun, how fast, no, you can work in substantial number of items. Right? So, hindi internal consistency yung apply to measure or to establish a psychometric property. Right? Or, meron na. Okay, moving on. Which of the following would result in the least appropriate estimate of reliability for a speed test? Okay, so is it test retest, alternate form, a split half in a single administration? Yung split half mo, ano siya, internal consistency. This is also connected to the prior item, saying that no, sa speed test, no, internal consistency is not applied. Split half from a single administration of the test, or split half from two independent half testing sessions. Okay, so yung split half na single administration of the test, definitely that's internal consistency. Okay, so yun, i-administer mo yung test and then you have to divide the items dapat compared. So noon, no, least appropriate kasi yun yung pinaka-essence na sinasabi na prior item at internal consistency of the item, which is not applied in previous. Okay, so pwede yung split half, internal internal consistency is not presented here sa split half because na dalawa yung administration sessions. So para siyang in a manner similar to the idea of test treatment or alternate or parallel. Hinati mo yung test mo into different sections. So letter D here no is similar to what's being demonstrated sa A and B. The answer here is letter C as the least yung least appropriate. So baka ma-confuse kayo no pag sinabi ang ano dito ang item no or ang choice no that may confuse you is letter D kasi both mentions C and D mentions split half. You might think of split half no automatic in our head no we talk about internal consistency. So pag nakita mo yung CD, tapos split half siya both. So you're saying, dapat C or D yung sagot. Kasi internal consistency is not applied or inter-item consistency, sorry, not applied for speed test. So note no yung dun sa ano sa choice na meron siyang different conditions sa single administration. Merong half testing condition. No, dalawa yung administration ng test. Choose the one that essentially represents the inter-item consistency, which is letter C. So that's 4. Again, for establishing psychometric property. Number 38, dito, has something to do with normal distribution din ito. So if a student received a score of 50 on a math test with a standard error of measurement 3, which of the following statements would be true of the true score? So this 68%, 95% would have to be the standard distribution or the standard percentage of distribution in a normal distribution curve. So looking at error measurement, this would be yung variance, the measure of variance from the true score. Okay, so ang score niya is 50 and then meron standard error 3. So the true score would have to be within the middle portion of the distribution, 68%. Okay, that's 68%, diba? Kasi 34 on the upper, 34 on the lower, about okay, the true score which is at the midpoint in the distribution. So dito 50 yung kanyang score, no, the true score would have to be plus minus 50. So minus 3, plus minus 3 sa 50. So 50 minus 3 would be 47, and 50 plus 3 is 53. So plus minus 3, 68%, that's the mid distribution. In a true score for with standard error measurement of 3. Okay, so further, another item of psychometric properties. Now, hopefully, we'll be able to cover at least all items for psychometric properties dun sa ating diagnostic review for the first half because we may possibly continue the other parts or the second half items in another session. Okay, number 39, a police administers a breathalyzer test to suspected drunk driver. So ito, usually, ginagamit ko sa foreign settings. But does not put on his glasses to read the meter. As a result, the records an incorrect blood alcohol level. This kind of mistake will affect blank reliability estimates. So, ang sinasabi, hindi niya nakita accurately kung ano yung na-record. Kasi nga hindi siya gamit sa klase. So there's an error on recording what's reflected on the tool or the measurement tool. So what is being affected there, as mentioned here in the item, is interscorer. Kasi no, others who may use no the same tool, yung breathalyzer, and administer it to the same driver and may yield no the same result. So kung malinaw yung mata, ma-measure niya yun accurately, and hindi magiging the same yung score nila with the one who did not use the eyeglasses. Okay, so hindi test retest, kasi pag gamit mo ng breathalyzer at calibrated yan, the same yung results na lalabas. Diba? Hindi rin internal consistency, no, because we assume no, calibrated, wala picture naman sa calibration dito ng food. Usually nagbabago yung internal consistency ng results ng mga ganitong apparatuses kung hindi sila calibrated. Kung hindi, parang sa weighing scale, no? The weighing scale is not calibrated. It may have varying results sa timbang mo. So, the internal consistency is affected if the apparatus would have problems with sa pag-measure ng certain behavior, no, such as ito, yung blood alcohol level. Okay, and so the answer here is the interscorer reliability. So when you're given, again, no, this is a situational question. So when you're given a situational question, look at the key question. So ang tinitingnan dito, reliability estimate. So you have to think quickly, ano yung mga reliability estimate, and what's your basic knowledge of the different reliability estimates, and given the scenario, you have to apply it. And at times, no, a challenge. See, ang application question or situational questions, for one, no, you should have mastery in the basic concepts, no, of the item, of the choices, no, in the item. No, if not, no, hindi mo yan, you cannot answer it correctly. So because you cannot apply. Now, without basic knowledge on reliability estimates, hindi natin ma-apply in this situation. So again, no, mastery and the basic concepts, no, will have to be primary. At natandaan na natin yung mga reliability estimates. And in our review, i-highlight pa natin so that we can easily remember all of it, so that pag may situation, we can readily apply. For number 40, a measure of clerical speed is obtained by a test that has respondents alphabetized index cards. So yung kanyang task mo is in a manner of performance task. The manual, no, for the test type is split up reliability coefficient for single administration of 0.925. Okay, so going back, sabi natin yung mga coefficients, no, for psychometric properties usually will utilize the correlation coefficient, no, and that maximum correlation coefficient is at 1.0. Kapag nakakita ka ng mga coefficients ng mga items talking about correlation, lagi dapat basic to our understanding, there is no a maximum perfect correlation, no, of 1.0. Para pag nakakita ka ng number 0.95, 0.8, you can infer right away there's a strong relationship or there's a weak relationship given the number. Para hindi ka lost. Bakit may number? Malagi tayo, bakit may number? Pag may number, na ano na tayo, na-intimidate. So, what's this number? So, always, pag nakikita niya yan, yung mga 0.95, lagi go to the reference na there is no a 1.0. The reference point for example. Okay, so what might you conclude? No, considering daw yung split half reliability coefficient for a single administration of a test. So, usually yan, ito yung internal consistency. Okay? Would be 0.9. So, the answer here is, sabi ko kanina, split half, the correlation coefficient for split half, technically or statistically, would just be half of the correlation of the items in the test. Kasi nga hinati mo siya sa dalawa. So, dito, sinasabi dito, yung answer, no, it's letter C. We're talking about, clerical speed. So the answer here is, this is a speed test. Letter C, the split half estimate should not have been used in this instance. Because, sabi natin kanina, going back, that's the speed test. Speed test, yung split half, it's an internal inter-item consistency measure. And that for speed test, we don't rely on using inter-item or internal consistency measures for speed test. Kasi nga, relatively, ang minimeasure niya is speed, how much you can consume, given enormous number of tasks, and making difficulty levels relatively the same. So you don't say it's highly reliable, kasi nga yung difficulty level naman is same, and that mainly, na ang minimeasure dun, diba, is how fast or how accurate you can work given the limit, how much you can work on. And this one is alphabetizing it. So with substantial number of units you are to work given a time limit. Usually time ends yung speed. So hindi applied yung split up as internal consistency measure. Similar to the other items ng speed test mentioned mo sa mga this. Further, other number 41, interpretations of criterion reference tests are typically made with respect to, so talking about criterion reference, sabi natin kanina, meron yung standard, predetermined standards of which you are to master a certain level of set of materials. Okay, so here, it's with respect to the material, the examining evidence mastery po. Okay, like talking about your board exam, you have materials to read and to understand the given topics. Meron kayong subject. Demonstrate that a test. The criterion reference test, you have to meet the standard for you to be considered proficient. So, merong percentage number of items na kailangan. You have to show mastery. So, you have correct answer for at least 75% the contents of the question. So, number 42. Ayan. Right, number 42. As the reliability of a test increases, the standard error of measurement, of course, decreases. Also basic to our understanding, diba? Keeping the error, standard error or the error rates low would mean higher psychometric effort. The more that we're able to demonstrate that our test is valid and reliable. So inverse, yeah, we don't basta anything you see na error, we don't want anything na mataas pagdating sa error rates, because it puts doubt sa ating mga assessment data. Number 43, so if the standard deviations, two tests are identical, but the reliability no, of reliability is lower for test A as compared to test B. So if you are given a chance to for this kinds no of questions, if you're given a chance, no, if it's for example computerized, no, and then you have you have a scratch paper, pen and paper, scratch paper, you can have this na parang a diagram para mas madali mo masundan yung mga ganitong klase ng question. So test A now has a um, lower reliability as test B. As yung reliability test B. Then the standard error of measurement, okay, then the standard error of measurement will be blank for A as compared to B. Again, when we talk about kanina, similar to prior discussion, pag mataas yung reliability, so the lower the error rates. So kung mababa ang reliability A, okay, chances are, no, it would have a higher standard error measurement compared to B. B has higher reliability. So ito, minsan, no, it would aid. Pag may mga questions na maraming elements, there are several elements na in a test. I think it would aid in seeing kung you can have some scratch paper wherein you can diagram the elements in the thing so that you can answer fast or easy rather than you're just trying to imagine it no, in your head. Like take time more. So if you want it fast, especially for the visual, I prefer that. Mas madadissect ko yung item kapag meron akong pencil or scratch paper, then I have to jot down the element in the question. So kung possibly allowed yan, for example, they have provided to the exam, that's allowed. Better yet, you have those ready. Hopefully, they have it ready for you. Testing set. Right? Number 45, now if a device to measure blood pressure consistently overestimated every assesses actual blood pressure sa blood pressure measurement in the tool. Which of the following could reasonably be yung aking voice. Saglit lang. Just sip and water. Alright. Going back, ayan. Which of the following could reasonably be expected to be true of the reliability? So, note kanina, sinasabi natin. Pag sinabing systematic error, the error applies regardless of the time it's administered, regardless who would be like done. Kasi nga, systematic. Yung error, no? Cross situation in assessment. Okay, so here, which is true in the true of the measuring device as years pass. So sabi dito, okay, answer is it will not be affected. Note that this is an example of systematic error. And systematic error doesn't affect reliability. Kasi nga, reliability is consistency. So results will still be consistent, only that it's overestimated. Diba? Ibig sabihin, na overshoot ng 10 units yung results ng date. So what is affected here is the validity, the date, not the reliability or the consistency. Consistency will still be present, but reliability will be right. Now further, hopefully we get to finish until you sorry. Right. Number 46. In general, which of the following is true of the relationship between the magnitude of the test retest reliability estimate and the length interval between test administration? Note that the test retest reliability would depend on the length of the interval between test administration. The more the longer the gap, the interval for the test retest um, administration. So states here on letter A, the longer the interval, that's for interval for the test retest, the administration of the test, the lower the reliability coefficient. Because the more length, the longer the time that we allot for test retest reliability, chances are behavior would be more valid or answers um, on the test or behavior measured by the test would vary. So in practice, yung practical application nito sa industry, is that the files for applicants or employees or examiners in company industry is only kept at a specific period of time. Yun yung sinasabi nila that your files will be kept in active time. So mainly has something to do with this one. So if within totally before I understand it's within 6 months. If within 6 months, no, you're not placed in a position, for example, you applied for in the position that um is available company. Your your HR officer may allow you to reapply. Reapply means you go back again to the procedure of assessment. Meaning, uulitin mo. Kung sinabing you're kept in the active file, the same data, the same assessment data is kept within a specific period that ang idea is the results would be relatively the same even if you're given the same assessment procedure in a specific time frame. So I'm just trying to cite the example, applying test retest. So hindi ka na bibigyan ng assessment procedure ulit. But kung 1 year na yung nag-lapse, chances are you would have to repeat your testing, application procedures, considering that it would have lower reliability coefficient. You may have um, um, different characteristics measured by the test already at this. Classical test theory formula. So meron yung sinasabi, merong true score. The X is our observed score, the T is the true score, and the E is the error. Yung error ng the measure ng test affected by the other tests, the administration. So ano naman yan? Um, classical test theory and something. Next item. Which of the following statements is true regarding differences between our so this is an evaluation question. So if you are not to evaluate, first you have to understand kailangan meron kang basic power test at the speed test. Otherwise, this would be on a higher level of difficulty rated for others. And so the answer is letter B in a power test. Test taker has time to complete all items. Sabi natin kanina, ang tinetest for power here, there's an increasing difficulty level of power being tested is how well you can cope to the increasing level of difficulty. Whereas for the speed test, yeah, there's a specific time limit imposed because what is being tested is how much you can consume and finish within the time limit. Okay, so remember, this the speed test has something to do with time. Ang pag-power test has something to do with the difficulty the task or the item being in a. Okay, next. A test containing 100 items is revised ayan, by deleting 20 items. Okay, sinasabi natin yan kanina, no, yung pag-increase natin ng test development, yung pag-increase natin ng items, increase reliability. So in this question, similar to the question a while ago, what will happen? So, trim down tayo ng item. Kaya dun sa revisions, sa item, sa test development, you are revising, you have, no, if there are items that are rejected now, technically, I'm sorry, pagka ikaw ay mag, administer or mag-rerun ng yung newly developed or revised, newly revised, you are to replace the item deleted. Otherwise, it will have a reliability testing. It would have an increase on the reliability estimate because decreasing the items in a test may affect reliability. See, consistency is measured across the items. Number 52, because of the unique problems in assessing very young children. So this is again an application question, practical application question. We're attempting to estimate the reliability of tests designed to measure cognitive and motor abilities in infants. Which of the following would be the best practice? Okay, the answer is letter A. Use relatively short test retest interval. No, why? Because development, cognitive and motor development. This question also utilizes your understanding on developmental psychology. For infants na relatively kanilang development would be progressive and fast. So hindi applicable sa kanila yung lengthy periods or interval na kung gagamitin mo yung S2. So answer dito is letter A. Relatively short, because of our understanding of the nature and characteristics of infants under development psychology. So this is assessment applied dev psych also. Kamusta pa kayo dyan? I hope okay kayo. Hope you're still able to listen. I tell you, it's also challenging. While it's a challenge to discuss, ayan, at least okay pa naman si lady. I know it's also a challenge to listen. Makikinig ka ng 3 hours, 4 hours sa lecture. Very tiring din. So I hope I can do some stretching, medyo stretch para somehow kahit nakikinig lang kayo, you're able to retain something. Kasi very tired sayang naman. Total nandito na tayo. We try to absorb as much. 53 is the variance of either variable correlational analysis. Then statistics. It's restricted by sampling procedure. Restricted by sampling procedure. Then, the resulting correlation coefficient tends to be, ang tendency, ito kanina yung sabi natin, ideal kasi when we talk about sampling procedure, what's most ideal to establish a very strong statistical standards would be the random sampling. So, random sampling. Kung meron tayong restricted range ng sampling, hindi natin, for example, na-cover yung full range ng representative sample. Kaya siya restricted ng sampling procedure, hindi natin nakuha yung ating representative sample. So, given that, no, again, it may affect statistical measures. Same concept, no, when we talk about research, pag nag-establish tayo ng correlation coefficients, no, sa research natin, no, ideally, pag quantitative, always we back random. So, ito yung sinasabi dito, limits na sampling natin. Isa, hindi natin makocover yung scientific sample. So, it affects the correlation. Tendency, it would yield lower correlation coefficient. Correlational coefficient. So that's key not to correlation. Correlation banks on identifying our samples in a random manner. You are able to cover the representative sample at hindi siya restricted. Okay, so here, this is assessment applied in industrial setting. Ganun yung complex ng assessment kasi you can be presented with application of assessment in various settings. So ito, from the choices itself, you can see this is industrial psychology, a vice president of personal employees, a corporate training test. Okay, so in the hiring process. So yung kanilang selection process, screening process ng selection of employees, meron silang tinatawag corporate screening. For future testing purposes, the VP maintains records of scores achieved by blank as opposed to blank in order to avoid restriction of range. Yung, again, restriction of range effects, talks about, and part of error, in our dito, the selection process. So, possibly, kung maaring in the process of administering corporate screening tests, they are unable to screen performing or efficient na mga workers. So what we want is to, sabi dito, maintain, the answer is maintain records of scores achieved by job applicants as opposed to the hired employees, meaning there should be a comparison of who are those who applied against who are those, what are the scores of those who are hired, so that they are able to identify the effectivity of the corporate screening test. Problem minsan sa industry is that they are able to, for example, apply screening procedures or testing procedures for selection of workers. Yet, those workers who are hired are unable to meet the standards needed for employees performing the work. So, what we want, para ma-check yung effectivity dito sa sample nito, they're trying to check the effectivity of the screening process, specifically the corporate screening. So they have to compare the scores by achieved by the job applicants compared by those who are hired, so that they can identify these be the standards set for hired employees. So ang pinaka key dito yung second na part ng choices, yung hired employee. So what you are establishing here is yung standards of who are the hired employees through the screening, corporate screening test. So definitely yung second choice mostly yung kailangan natin tingnan. If you can see here, yung yung sa second choice, no, hired employees, job applicants. We also have hired employees, for letter C. Then you have other corporate officers. So if you know that most important yung hired employees to identify the corporate screening test, would be an effective tool to identify. So it's now between A or C. Okay, so hindi natin compare the hired employees with successful employees because what we're after at is corporate screening test and how we're able to establish standards for sports obtained the test. So it in reference to the job applicant. So they are able to take the test. All job applicants, there are those who are not hired against those who are hired. Yung successful employees, they all cover. Pag sinabi successful employees dito, they all cover hired employees. Hired din sila, but under the hired employees, may successful. Successful means they are highly rated in their job performance. And it's not covered here in the IT. Walang discussion dito sa job performance. It's not a matter of identifying standards for the records of the corporate screening. Okay, so it would be this one is a higher level of difficulty for assessment question applied in industrial set. So hopefully in your IO, if your industrial psychology or your basics of industrial psychology, you have covered discussions of certain theories related to no selection and screening of applicants, job applicants or workers or employees. Yan kasi yung isa sa mga very common application of assessment when we talk about screening and selection of employees or applicants. Okay, so itong number 55 is just a definition of term. So definitely we have to be you have to have mastery of basic understanding of term. So Latin trait theory, Latin means unobservable. So hindi siya in assessment, meron tayong mga traits na ang ating assumption is that we measure traits that are observable, traits that we can validate by certain performance, certain observations. Okay. These are overt traits. So ang idea is we are in assessment, we are measuring samples of behavior that are relatively overt, observable. In Latin trait theory, they say there are some there are some parts ng score sa test that are unobservable. It's measured na unobservable o covert. So may mga ibang tests that may measure ones, for example, covert trait. Once attitude, or once mood could lead to some forms of not mood kasi is something we can observe. Could be attitude. So attitude would mean that behavior is manifested in some future scenario. Hindi siya immediately observable. That it kasi is unobservable. At the moment, you would not be able to measure it. Katulad ng attitude or perception. Another item, an item response theory. This is another theory assessment. Bago na at revert sa number 44 yung we'll still something. Item response theory is a term used to refer to, letter C, a family of models for data analysis. Okay, so again, yung IRT, item response theory. sinasabi niya na yung difficulty ng item mo affect your performance in answering a specific. So, when we talk about models of data, it may include yung item procedure. So, item difficulty is one. No, item endorsement of another, or when we say item endorsement for personality tests, those who are able to endorse the item, those will answer yes to an item. That's part of our response theory. These would be parts that we use to interpret test data. Okay, our client's response to the items will have to be influenced by these item analysis procedure, data analysis procedure. Further, we'll talk about that. I think under the topic of tech development. So this theory, yung IRT, yung classical classical um, test theory would all be applied about procedures in test development. 57. In the context of item response theory, the term discrimination best refers to again part yun ng data analysis, item discrimination. Okay, the degree to which the item differentiates people with respect to trait being measured. So item discrimination means high scorers yield traits, low scorers doesn't yield a trait. So, for example, specific item, yung mga high scorers, they are expected to answer correctly in an item. And then yung mga low scorers, they are expected not to answer correctly. And these two groups would be compared in terms of the item discrimination index. So, kaya, the term discrimination for item discrimination in the data analysis for item response theory means it differentiates people with respect to the traits being measured. Okay, so ang idea kasi ng test, when we administer a test or a psychological test, what we want is we measure the trait that's present again to our client or examinee. Yung kanyang observed score manifest more his true score or true traits. So ang idea kung mababa yung score, meaning they do not possess the trait. So pagka sinabing it's able to establish item discrimination, that specific item filters those who possess the trait against those who do not possess the trait. For example, you are given measuring your knowledge in type assessment. So there are high scorers, there are low scorers. In a specific item, there would be poor item discrimination if everyone would be able to answer item correctly, regardless of whether they are high scorers in the distribution or whether they are low scorers in the distribution. So regardless kung high or low score, kung hindi mo na-discriminate sino yung knowledgeable about the topic or not knowledgeable about the topic, if that specific item would have low item discrimination index or poor item discrimination index. Okay, so yun yung premise or concept when we talk about item discrimination. That's under the data analysis for item response team. Next, this is supposed to be 8, pero let's take on this number. Which statistic can help the test user determine how large a difference, how large a difference must be for scores yielded from two different tests not to be considered statistically significant. Okay, so ang sinasabi nito, anong statistics yung mag-a-identify para makita natin And kita natin yung difference no, between two scores obtained no in the test. Okay, so the answer here na standard error of difference no between the two scores. No, how ang gustong establish no how large a difference no must be for scores yielded no, from two different tests to be admitted to be considered statistically significant. So but what we want no dun sa question no is to identify no difference no difference for scores yielded no, from two different things. So we're trying to identify whether no merong consistency no on those uh, not consistency. No, it has to identify kasi nga different test. Sorry, it's not consistency. Since different test, no, it has to identify whether it would yield differences between two scores. So what we are hoping to use no, would be standard error. So yung standard error would yield not the true score, no, but other factors affecting scores na in it. So that's the statistics applied in this specific situation. Further, well, we can consume up until this page, no, and nasa page ano pa lang tayo, page 8. I hope we could at least work on hanggang page 10 Sam, so that we can have it two parts because we will continue the other parts, the other half no in no a part 2 of our okay, okay, for number 58, okay, it's a measure of validity that is arrived at comprehensive analysis on how scores test relate to scores. So may kino-compare score no from one test to another. It's construct validity, no, and this is the most common. We're still identifying here psychometric properties, specifically validity. Now, this is one of the most important validity measure, construct validity, because when we talk about validity, measuring what it intends to measure, what we want is to establish, uh, statistically establish that our test construct or the variables measured in the test measures what it intends to measure. So, ano daw, may gusto three part. O sige, pwede tayo mag-three part. Para ano lang, mas ma-digest natin. Kasi nga, importante yung ano no. I would also agree, importante yung review ng test items. Kasi ito yung ano, yung ating foundation when we go into the details of it. Tanong natin no if mag-agree sila Sir Dom with the suggestion na we can work on a three part para understandably no pagod na din yung iba, baka hindi na sustain din yung iba dun sa discussion, so sayang naman. But no, I would agree to that for schedule kung i-arrange ng ating beloved si Sir Dom. Okay, so going back na yung construct validity, one of the most important validity measure, no, because this establishes the idea that our construct or our variables in the test measures what it intends to measure. And this is the reason why pagka tinignan niya yung mga test manuals, bago magamit sila ng ibang standardized tests measuring similar test constructs, no, to test construct or to establish construct validity. So if you are trying, for example, to establish a validity, for example, a test measuring specific personality, like for example, emotional stability, no, the score no in a test no in emotional stability, test measuring emotional stability will be correlated to another test. No? Also, another test, standardized test, no, also measuring emotional stability, so that this establishes construct validity. Meaning, yung items dun sa newly developed test is measuring what it intends to measure, which is emotional stability. If if found to be that there is a strong correlation between the scores in a newly developed emotional stability test compared to or correlated to the scores in a test, standardized test, measuring also emotional stability. Okay, so that's the idea of construct validity. There are other validity measures that we will discuss in the lecture. But yun yung ano na to, intro na ng validity measures, psychometric. A while ago, you've been studying reliability and how it's into different types of things. Ngayon for 59, no, which is not a method no, of evaluating the validity. That personality. So dito, the answer is letter C, no, evaluating percentage no, passing and failing grades. No, because passing and failing grades of the test no, will not no, reflect whether no, the test measures what it intends to measure. Okay, for letter A, sabi dito, evaluating scores of the test as compared to scores obtained on other tests yun yung construct validity. For letter B, no, evaluating the content of the test. Okay, yan, content no, validation. Okay, and then for letter B, no, evaluating test scores as they relate to predictions no, from a particular theory. So yung tatlo na yun has something to do with measuring what the test intends to measure. So yung ating mga constructs, no, may basis yan no, on a specific theory. It's defined no, based on certain theoretical assumptions. So it can be compared to other tests measuring similar constructs. And it can be content validated based on experts who are able to deal with that specific construct. So yung content validation, no, usually pagka we seek for an expert for validation, usually the best to do content validation are those no, who deal with these test functions. For example, you are trying to talking about emotional stability, you are trying to develop a test so that they measure, for example, suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, or suicidal tendencies now of patients now with mood disorder. For example. So best na mag-content validate is not just anyone. It has to be someone expert in the area. Someone, for example, dealing directly with mood disorder. So yung someone specializing no, in the area, the topic of the test. So that's for content. So that ABD, no, are validity measures, and yung letter C, hindi yan nagme-measure. They're just identifying who would be the are able to pass or able to fail. So mainly no difficulty level yung measure doon sa letter C. How many would be the percentage of those who pass, how many are able to fail. Para related yan din sa item difficulty. Item difficulty as a different formula. That's not the formula. But related to letter C is the answer for this one. Okay, so okay, would say no we tingnan natin si ay daan tayo. Sige, let's continue hanggang ano daw we can And we can continue until 65. Para daw, yun ang ating, yun ang cut, 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 cut off point natin for the first, for the first part. Okay, so we continue after from 60. Okay, so number 60, okay, which assessment, although kanina nag-iba-iba na yung ating number, we continue hanggang 60 for other. Which assessment technique is the best example of face validity? So, no, yung face validity, they say, it's not actually a measure of, it's not a technical measure for validity. So, we're saying that test is valid on face value level. So here, best example for a face valid method is the letter P. Administering a word processing test to a person, applying to a job that requires the use of a word processor. Okay, it's an example of a face valid measure, no, because technically tinitignan naman the word processing. So you are identifying kung yung bang word processor would be able to screen applicant, okay, for the word processing test. So, pag sinabi kasi at face value, no, you know what the test is all about, not just by looking at the items itself. You know it's an IQ test, no, if you see in the items, abstract yung content. Mga items dyan, no, about basic knowledge on math, English, and science, which could be relatively aptitude test. There are questions there, no, measuring one's preferences, for example, no, different scenarios. So this could be a personality. So that's the idea of at face value. Face value. It's for one, no, for example, it's a cell phone because you know the features of a cell phone. Ganun din sa test. It's an intelligence test because you know what's the basic feature of an intelligence. So may same manner in this item, you know it's a word processing test if you are administering a test, no, that requires the use of word processor. So this way yung test, no, would have to yield, what you want, to measure at face value. Okay, it's not ACD, A, personality test, in which test takers are asked to describe what they see in the blood. Because we know, in projectives, hindi at face value yung interpretation. Diba? Hindi natin masasabi, ano nga ba yung mini-measure pagdating sa ink blood, pagdating sa drawing ng pictures. So, yung mga projectives, what's being revealed, yung unconscious thought processes, yung mga hidden conflicts, yung mga internal issues that's being projected on here, projected on the material, ink blots, the drawings, the pictures, yung ng projectives. So we'll cover a few parts of that. So yun, hindi mo yan na-apply for face validity. Kasi hindi mo alam kung ano yung measure behind those stimulus. They say ambiguous stimulus. Could be picture cards, could be drawings, could be preferences in color preferences, inferences on the ink blots, and other stimulus available sa project. Okay? So that's excluded, A and C. For letter D, measuring the height, that's applying for a semi-pro basketball. Okay, so basketball, of course, we want to look at players that are relatively tall. But what's essential also in basketball is skills. So yung height, hindi naman yan measure na marunong mag-basketball. Hindi naman lahat ng tangkap could mean papasok na mayroong proficiency sa skill ng paglalaro ng basketball. So, hindi rin yan at face value. O hindi rin yan applicable sample ng face value. Kasi kung basketball team, ang gusto mo syempre makita yung basic skills ng basketball. But kumari, tinitingnan din natin yung ibang characteristics such as height. Minsan pati build. Kailangan medyo muscular kasi physical game ng basketball. So, it's for sports psychology. Those items are holding the different areas ng psychology. Okay, number 61. Now, in an undergraduate measurement course, an instructor announces that the first exam will cover the topics of reliability and validity. When a student in class, Shamar, publicly predicts that only questions on reliability will be. Okay, so, sinabi may coverage, pero sabi ng isang student, it will just be reliability that will include. As it turns out, it's true to the student's prediction. So given this item, medyo mahaba. But you have to spot on right away necessary so that you don't take so much time. Given the background, which is the following, is most reasonable conclusion on the student prediction. Okay, so alam natin that when we talk about coverage ng test, if the teacher says exam covers chapters 1 to, of course, you have to focus on reviewing chapters 5 because that's the coverage from the test. If the test coverage will be 1 to 5, and yet the questions included other items from other chapters 6 to 10. So that now has something to do with content validity. So the exam will lack content validity. Content validity is something to do with the coverage of the text is measured. Okay, further, before constructing a comprehensive finding, yung mga more situational dun sa psychometric properties. Okay, final exam that covers everything you have studied since the first days of this discovery to cover this. Your instruction reviews the objectives of the course. Textbook and all lecture notes. Your instructor is clearly making a diligent effort to maximize, again, content validity for the faculty, considering that it same manner when you prepare for the board, you to collate all the materials. You have to know the syllabus, the updated syllabus, for the coverage for the board. And you have to have a copy of that. What would be the percentage of questions coming from conceptual concepts, theories, and questions coming from the needed skills for assessment, for example. Prior syllabus, meron silang equal percentage, 50% would test, your knowledge on basic concepts and theories in assessment, and then 50% would test your skills assessment. So, yung 50% na skills on assessment, definitely situational questions, applying ethics, applying questions, or this kinds of questions on validity. So that would be content validated procedure for the okay. Hopefully okay pa kayo and trying to abide by third, although it's 5:08 already. So we are requested to cover hanggang number 65. Unfortunately, yung number 63, 64 onwards yata ay mga situational. Pag situational, no, we have dissected writing. So, sana ano pa, so you're still there, konti na lang. You're trying to, to maximize our brain. So, a team no, of consumer psychologists is interested in conducting research to test palatability of Papa John's pizza. Yan, no? Magugutom tayo sa sample. So, nating mag-test yung palatable TJP. So, there's a survey now. Survey on the basis of opinions that were present in for developing the survey. No? So, pag develop nung survey tool to identify how tasty this pizza or meron silang respondents na inmates. No? So, the same inmates more than used no, to validate survey. So, yung initially, yung kanilang um, needs assessment for the development of the survey tool, the same din yung ginamit na mag-validate ng survey questionnaire. So, was there an error now for the test developers? Kasi nga, nag-develop sila ng test. Meron silang kinuha na feedback, and then from the feedback, they have developed the algorithm. And now, they're developing the final standardized survey questionnaire tool. Same din yung kanilang respondents. And so, states here na the test would be invalid due to criterion contamination. Criterion contamination would be one of the errors in selecting representative sample for our own development just the test development. Criterion contamination kasi same din yung basis mo for um the initial development mo type. Tapos sila din yung yung ginamit mo for validation mo paper and survey. So it would mean there would be more familiarity to this test being developed. So would be that would be error the position test development. So we'll talk more about that again the test development. But this one is presented here to show errors for a sampling. Sampling to um, selection ng samples for validation ng mga tests. Okay? So ayan, na tayo sa ating last two items. No? The form of criterion related that reflects the degree to which test scores is correlated with the criterion measure obtained at the same time that the test score was obtained is known as concurrent validity. This is definition, basic know-how the definition of criterion validity. So may mga different types ng validity, concurrent validity. There are different scores correlated with specific criterion related to the measured by the again, babalikan pa natin itong types ng validity. Trying to introduce to you itong mga validity and for our last item, the difference between concurrent and predictive. From the word itself, predicted kasi it's the score is predicted by a future performance. Unlike concurrent, yung test score can be validated at the same time. Yun yung prior item for concurrent validity. So the time frame matters pagdating sa validation of concurrent and predictive. So for predictive validity, para ma-validate mo yung test score is valid, merong future performance. Usually, this is the school setting, the admission test scores can be correlated to students' score or general weighted subjects. So meaning no, a future performance can be correlated no, to the construct measured in the addition predictive. No, ganun din sa industry, no, screening tests for applicants can be validated by performance tests no, of employees no, in their job, so predictive. Whereas concurrent, the, the test score can be validated the same time, at the same time. So the time frame measuring the criterion would be the key difference no, between the two types of validity measure. So, yan, I think, ayan, na-fulfill ko na ang request ni Mr. Dong. I hope okay lang kayo dyan na nakikinig. Not overwhelmed, yet you're able to refresh some of your knowledge and to review no, important key points. I would have to stop screen sharing at this point. Tayo ay magpapatuloy okay, on our part. But um, how are you? Kumusta? I hope ano, you're, you're able to cope with listening. Hirap, hirap talaga mag-review. But ano, that's for the love of, for the love of us, no, being able to practice, no, we'll do our very best. I hope you're able to set no your tone now. Mabigat daw talaga yun. Like, gaano kabigat yan? Yung bigat ko na ba yan? Okay. I hope you're able to set your tone now for your review. Mabigat siya talaga kasi assessment is everywhere. Apply siya sa industry. Kita niyo na, no? Apply siya sa, it's applied na in different settings. So, unang-una talaga dun, meron tayo, no, we hold on to the basic knowledge. Let's embrace the basic knowledge concepts tapos punta tayo dun application. Okay. Good afternoon. I hope okay pa ang lahat. And we're ending here. We will continue. It's now 5:16. I'm sorry nag-ano tayo overtime. No, very important din sa atin. Tayo kasi may dapat facing tayo. We have to have discipline of time, coverage. Kailangan reminded din. Okay, so thank you so much everyone for joining this afternoon's review. No, and we'll continue in next week. Good afternoon. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you sa lahat. Thank you so much.